Chapter 1372. Perhaps because she hadn't slept well for the past 2 days, she held his hand and sat by the bed to look at him. She felt that his slightly cold palm was still warm, and she could feel the pulse on his wrist. Outside, there was the sound of rain, and the room was filled with the fragrance of medicine. Feng Ling sat on the small wooden stool and pressed her forehead against his hand to sleep. After sleeping for less than 10 minutes, there was a sudden clap of thunder in the sky. Feng Ling opened her eyes with a jerk, only to see that Li Nanheng was still sleeping. The temperature of his hand had always been warm, and the intermittent beating of his pulse was maintaining his extremely fragile life. Feng Ling opened her eyes to look at him. She held his hand tightly and moved the small stool forward, leaning even closer against the bed. She held his hand while looking at the man's weak and sleeping face. From Washington to New York, to Jerusalem, to this Gorkin farm, she had searched for him for so many days. Now, he was still alive. Even if he was seriously injured and unconscious, he at least had a peaceful breathing and vitality. She could feel his temperature and see his existence on her fingertips. As if she had thought of something, Feng Ling slowly raised his hand and pressed his warm palm against her face. She gently rubbed his hand against her face and kept looking at him. At this moment, the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside. Carrie and the doctor hurriedly brought the medicine back. At this moment, the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside. Carrie and the doctor hurriedly brought the medicine back. After entering the door, Carrie shook off the water on the umbrella and turned to see Feng Ling standing by the bed. She then looked at her holding Li Nanheng's hand and wanted to say something. She endured it and did not speak. In the blink of an eye, she saw that the doctor gave her a look and asked her to continue helping. Carrie had no choice but to follow. When he went to the side to continue preparing the medicine, Dr. Mona said softly in the local language, "In order to find him, Miss Feng seems to have rushed here from far away." Carrie lowered her head to prepare the medicine. She did not reply, but her expression was clearly unhappy. "He doesn't belong to you," Dr. Mona said again. Carrie pursed her lips. After a long while, she said, "I know. It's good that you know. There are many men in our town who like you. There's no need for you to care too much about an unknown outsider. Besides, it's obvious that they're a very affectionate couple." Carrie was depressed for a long time before she said, "Uncle Mona, I've never thought that an Asian man was so good-looking before. When I brought him back from the river that day, I only wanted to save him. After wiping him clean, I realized that this man is really good-looking. Even if it's pretty, it's not yours." "I know." Carrie pursed her lips. When this Miss Feng came to look for someone that day and said that she was looking for her fiancé, I knew. Looking at her indignant little eyes, Dr. Mona smiled. He knew that she knew her limits and just didn't know how to restrain her emotions, so he didn't say anything else. He only reminded her one last time, "You're a doctor." "Yes." Feng Ling couldn't understand their conversation, but she had no time to listen because Li Nanheng had woken up. His fingers moved first. He probably felt that someone was holding his hand. He instinctively wanted to move his hand away, but she held it tightly. He opened his eyes. Even though he couldn't see, he didn't move much. However, he seemed to know who was holding his hand by the bed. Seeing that he had woken up, Feng Ling quickly got up. As though afraid that her existence would agitate him again, she did not dare to speak. She only turned to look at the doctor for help. Seeing this, Dr. Mona walked over. Only then did Feng Ling let go of his hand. When she let go, the man did not habitually grab her like before. Instead, he quietly placed his hand by the bed and did not make any unnecessary movements. The doctor went to check on his current condition. Feng Ling kept her gaze on the bed, unwilling to leave it for even an inch. 10 minutes later, the doctor retreated from the bedside. She saw that Li Nanheng had already closed his eyes again, but his eyes seemed to be slightly red. It was probably because his eyes were uncomfortable and not because he had fallen asleep again. Dr. Mona turned back to continue preparing the medicine. At the same time, he said a few words to Carrie. After listening for a while, Carrie turned back to translate for Feng Ling. Uncle Mona said that he applied medicine to his eyes during the day. Later, his eyes were probably uncomfortable from the stimulation of the medicine, so he took it off again. He just woke up. When he opened his eyes, there were still some remnants of medicine around his eyes. That's why his eyes are red. Don't worry. Feng Ling did not say anything but nodded gratefully at Carrie. Carrie looked at her unwillingly, but there was nothing she could do. No matter how natural enemies women were, at this time, she could only be considered a doctor. She had only saved a man. She couldn't really snatch a man from someone else. If that happened, her grandmother would probably beat her to death with her walking stick. After a while, the doctor handed Feng Ling a bowl of black and green medicine that he had just prepared. He wanted her to feed Li Nanheng the medicine. When Feng Ling took it, Carrie glared at the doctor unhappily. The doctor pretended not to see and gestured for Feng Ling to take good care of him. Feng Ling nodded and walked to the bedside with the bowl of medicine. Dr. Mona then gave Carrie a warning look like an elder. Carrie pouted, angrily picked up the umbrella, and turned to leave. By the bedside, Feng Ling heard the door open and close. She looked at Carrie's back and then turned to look at Dr. Mona. The doctor gave her a, "It's fine, don't worry about her," look before Feng Ling retracted her gaze. She first tried to help Li Nanheng up from the bed. The man on the bed seemed to have sensed it when her hand touched him. When he was about to avoid her, Feng Ling pressed him down gently and slowly. She firmly and unyieldingly helped the man who was so weak that he could not even defeat a single finger of hers. She then picked up the pillow and another blanket by the side and helped him make a comfortable place to lean against. She then gently pressed him down so that he could lean against it. Li Nanheng was clearly resistant to her. Although Feng Ling had never spoken, they were too familiar with each other. A habitual movement of her hand, a breath, even if it was silent, even if he couldn't see, he could accurately sense that she was by the bed. Feng Ling gently blew on the medicine, sat by the bed, and carefully fed it to his mouth. Seeing that he did not open his mouth, she placed the black and green medicine back to her mouth to taste it. The taste was still strange and disgusting, similar to the medicine Kay used. She felt that the temperature was fine and continued to bring it to his mouth. Chapter 1373. Li Nanheng did not drink it at first, but Feng Ling used a spoon to gently pry open his motionless lips and fed him the medicine bit by bit. The man frowned, as though he felt that her hands would be sore if she kept raising them like this. After holding on for a long time, he opened his unfocused eyes and calmly ate the medicine. Seeing that he was actually cooperating, Feng Ling's heart finally relaxed a little. Her lips were dyed with a smile for the first time in days, and she continued to feed him. She fed him diligently. He could not see her and did not say anything. After drinking more than half of the medicine, Feng Ling turned back to ask the doctor if he wanted to continue feeding him. The doctor looked at the remaining medicine and told her with his eyes that it was enough. This kind of eye contact was the way they were used to communicating when they were taking care of Kay at the doctor's house a few days ago. Although Dr. Mona knew a little simple Chinese, his vocabulary was very small. Other than the occasional necessary conversation, he could not communicate for a long time. Feng Ling put down the bowl and picked up a clean towel to gently wipe the medicine stains by his mouth. The man did not resist. Although he could not see, his eyes did not stay in her direction. He was clearly tilting his head and not looking at her. Feng Ling was here tonight, especially after Li Nanheng woke up. she did not say a word. Even though they knew each other well, she did not speak. She only sat by the bed and watched him take care of him. Even if there was an obvious indifference in his eyes that kept people 1,000 miles away. Late at night, Carrie had yet to return. Granny Ma came over and brought them some food. She then told Fong Ling that Carrie had gone to her place to spend the night and that there was no need to worry. Not long after, Dr. Mona also went out for an emergency because a child from a family in the town was sick. He asked Fong Ling to stay here alone and prepared the medicine to be heated by the side. Late at night, although this was Carrie's room, the room was quiet and only the two of them were left. Fong Ling silently sat by the bed and watched the man who had already laid down again. Li Nanheng closed his eyes, and the redness around his eyes had mostly recovered. She tentatively reached out to touch his eyelids to see if there were any signs of his eyelids heating up. However, when her hand was still a centimeter away from his eyes, the man abruptly raised his hand to hold her wrist. Although Li Nanheng was not strong, his intention to stop him was obvious. Right now, his eyes were the most sensitive part of his body and heart. Fong Ling withdrew her fingers and looked down at him. After a long while, she finally withdrew her hand and said softly, "Li Nanheng." The man closed his eyes and did not respond. He only quietly placed his hands back to his side. When he heard her voice, he did not have any extra reaction. It was as though a completely unrelated person was disturbing his sleep. He merely adopted an attitude of ignoring her. Seeing that he was not agitated, Fong Ling confirmed that the 2 times he coughed up blood were coincidences. She leaned closer to the bed and whispered, "Boss Li." Hearing these words, the man on the bed still did not have any reaction. "Kay lost a leg," she said softly. "Do you know?" Finally, this news that he had only learned after being unconscious for many days caused the man's brows to furrow silently. Although it was not obvious, even the slightest fluctuation in his emotions could still be captured by Fong Ling, who was sitting by the bed. She continued, "He knows that you risked your life to save him, so even though he lost a leg, he at least saved his life." The room was quiet. There was only the disgusting and bitter smell of medicine that was acceptable. Fong Ling's voice also appeared very quiet in this quiet room. Her clear and clean voice clearly broke through the dark fog of the night and penetrated the high walls layer by layer. "If, at this time, Kay gives up the chance to be treated because he has no leg and some symptoms caused by chemical poisoning, would you hate iron for not being strong enough? Would you want to wake him up?" Fong Ling looked at his face as she spoke. "Just like how I treat you now. If you weren't so weak that you couldn't even stand up, Li Nanheng would slap you a few times first." Speaking up to hear, Fong Ling suddenly smiled self-deprecatingly and looked at the man who had closed his eyes without any reaction. "Are you scolding me in your heart? I've never been very gentle to you, have I? I still remember what you said to me. Now, I can ask you the same question." She leaned against the bed, leaned close to his ear, and whispered, "Li Nanheng, you've been a tyrant in my life for more than 10 years, stirring up waves after waves in my life. Now you say you don't remember me, and you say you don't remember me. Do I agree?" He did not speak, and Fong Ling was not anxious. Anyway, she knew that he was awake. "Speaking of which, the last time we met was in Washington. You should know how I was drunk step by step the night before." Fong Ling's voice was clear. "Why? Are you so eager to get rid of your relationship with me? Are you afraid that I'll settle the score with you? You deliberately got me drunk to trick me, didn't you?" As Fong Ling spoke, she continued to whisper into his ear. Her breath gently brushed against his ear. "You should know very well that I was already awake at that time. I remember everything that happened after I returned to the room from the hot spring. Do you want me to repeat what happened to you?" Finally, on the bed, the man who had always been calm and unperturbed, slightly turned his pale face, obviously avoiding her breath. Feng Ling, who had always been passive and was always very contradictory and unreasonable when it came to matters between men and women, took the initiative to mention that night. Her voice was slow and gentle, and there was a different kind of ruthlessness in her seductive voice. He didn't acknowledge her, so she was angry. But she couldn't be angry. Feng Ling looked at his face. He did not turn back. From this angle, he had grown a lot of stubble on his jawline. He had really lost too much weight. She no longer leaned against the side of the bed. Instead, she placed one hand on the edge of the bed and looked at him with watery eyes. Her voice sounded calm, but she deliberately raised the last syllable. What do I look like when I'm drunk? That makes you so obsessed with getting me drunk. Li Nanheng, don't avoid my topic. Perhaps you can think of it this way. Perhaps I came here to see you alive again and to settle the score with you. Chapter 1374. The room was too quiet. If it weren't for the fact that Feng Ling had been chattering non-stop, the room would have been completely silent. However, Feng Ling, who usually didn't speak much, was like a chatterbox right now. She kept talking, as though she was afraid that he would be gone in the next moment, afraid that he wouldn't be able to hear her, and as though she didn't want everything to be too quiet. If it was quiet, it wouldn't be real enough. She couldn't be sure that she was awake or that he was alive. So, what do I look like when I'm drunk? Do I talk to you a lot? That's why you know that I need that financing. That's why you know that the first thing I want to do is to get rid of TMing, so after that night, you helped me achieve it one by one. Did I tell you all of this at the time? What else? Do you like me when I'm drunk? Which side of me do you like? If you're not seriously injured and need someone to take care of you, I can drink 2 bottles of wine in front of you at any time. You can do whatever you want. She didn't know which part of her words had touched his sore spot, but the man's fingers that had been quietly placed by his side moved. Feng Ling looked at his hand and reached out to touch it. However, she saw that he retracted his fingers and clenched them into a fist. He did not intend to shake her hand. Feng Ling looked at his hand for a while but didn't touch it again. She looked at him and said generously, "Forget it. You're a patient. It's inevitable that you have a temper when you're in a bad mood. I won't argue with you." Late at night. Li Nanheng, do you want some water? Boss Li, will your back be sore from lying down? Li Nanheng, are you asleep? Li Nanheng, I suddenly thought of a particularly boring and serious question. These days, you've been coughing up blood every day and your clothes are covered in blood. You've been frequently changed to wipe your body. Was it that Carrie who wiped it for you? So, she saw you naked. Finally, the man who had been silent for the entire night frowned silently and said hoarsely, "She's a doctor." Hearing that he actually opened his mouth to explain, Feng Ling stood by the bed and looked at him without speaking for a while. The woman who had been talking the whole night suddenly quietened down. The atmosphere was so serious that it was a little strange. The man on the bed was silent for a moment before he opened his unfocused eyes and glanced at Feng Ling. Feng Ling looked into his eyes. Even though their eyes met, he couldn't see her. However, she still stared into his eyes and said, "All these years, you've really kept yourself clean. Other than Feng Mingzhu's wishful thinking, you've never given me any chance to be jealous. But now, I'm really jealous." She was clearly saying that she was jealous, but there was a little bit of success in her tone. It was obvious that she was a little proud that she had finally forced him to speak. Li Nanheng's cold face returned to its expressionless and unresponsive state. He did not say a word. Coincidentally, Feng Ling's phone vibrated. She picked it up and saw that it was a message from Tam. They had already learned that Boss Li and Kay were here and were preparing to break through the border of Jerusalem at dawn. At the same time, they had already notified the Hall of 11 base. After reading the message, Feng Ling put down her phone and looked at the man on the bed. When the base received the news, they would definitely rush over immediately. Whether Li Nanheng was willing or not, even if they had to carry him, Feng, Han Jin, and the others would come and carry him onto the plane. However, in a place like Israel, wherever a helicopter passed by, it would cause quite a commotion and fear. She thought for a moment and sent them a message, telling them to be careful when they arrived and not scare the people of Gorkin Farm. The people here were frightened by the war, but they were kind and simple. After all, they had saved Li Nanheng and Kay's lives. Feng Ling hoped that they would come clean and leave clean. She didn't want to cause too much impact on the people here. In the morning, it rained for an entire night. The air in Gorkin Farm was moist and no longer so dry. Many people here had woken up early and were walking back and forth outside. Feng Ling heard the sound and woke up. She lay by the bed all night. When she woke up, she saw that Li Nanheng was sleeping. She quickly got up and touched his forehead and neck to check if his arteries and heartbeat were still there. In the end, the sleeping man woke up because of her actions. Although he did not open his eyes, he said lightly, "There's no need to check. He's still alive." His voice was very soft and low, but these few words made Feng Ling's heart, which had been hanging slightly when she had just woken up, instantly relax. She retracted her hand and looked at the man with his eyes closed. She said, "Tam and the others have already contacted the base. Based on the time and speed of the plane, the base's helicopter will arrive before noon." Li Nanheng did not respond, but his brows were clearly furrowed. It seemed like he did not want to be picked up by the base in such a state. At this moment, Feng Ling turned around and looked around the small room. She found the white rice that Carrie had asked for from Granny Mai. The people of Gorkin Farm rarely ate this white rice. After all, Granny Mai was from China, so she would occasionally buy some from passing merchants and store it at home. Feng Ling did not know how to cook other food here. Thankfully, there was some white rice that could be used to cook some porridge for him to eat. Less than an hour later, the room was filled with the fragrance of porridge. Feng Ling went to get a bowl of porridge for him and helped him up like last night. At this moment, Li Nanheng clearly knew that it was useless to resist. Even though his attitude was still cold and distant, he did not do anything in vain. She helped him up, and he cooperated. He did not speak, but at least he was willing to eat the porridge she fed him. The porridge had just been cooked and was still very hot. Before Feng Ling fed him, she would blow on it a few times and gently touch it with her lips to test the temperature. There were a few times when she was scalded and trembled. The man on the bed clearly felt her movements and silently raised his unfocused eyes to look at her. After feeding him a bowl, she asked him if he wanted more. The man was silent at first, but a few seconds later, he nodded. Feng Ling quickly went to get another bowl, but when she returned to the bed to feed him, he did not eat. This porridge couldn't be wasted. Seeing that he didn't eat, Feng Ling sat by the bed and ate a few mouthfuls with the spoon and bowl he had used. After eating a few mouthfuls, she turned to look at the man sitting quietly by the bed and finally realized what was going on. He had wanted her to eat some of it in the first place. "Oh, my little wife has been too clingy these days. I can't take it." Chapter 1375. It was not noon. To be precise, it was 10:00 in the morning at Gorkin Farm. Two heavy helicopters flew through the clear sky after the rain and headed straight for Gorkin Farm. Because they had received Tam's reminder not to alarm the people here, the helicopter stopped in the open space near Gorkin Farm. However, it still attracted the surprise of many locals. Some people thought that the war had spread here again, and when they saw the helicopter, they ran home in fright. Tam and Lin Cheng had already arrived by car. Ah Feng and Han Jin brought a few elite members of the base out of the cabin door. When they saw Tam and Lin Ching, their expressions shifted between them. As members of the sniper team, they did not listen to the base's orders and violated the base's regulations. No matter what the reason was, no matter whether they had contributed or not, according to the base's standards, the two of them were now sinners of the base. However, no one treated them as sinners. Instead, they quickly walked forward and asked, "Boss, where are they now?" Feng Ling sent us the coordinates. They're inside. Tam and the others rushed in. However, because they had alarmed the locals of Gorkin Farm, many locals had already gone home to grab their weapons, wooden sticks, shovels, and all sorts of other things. Feng Ling had indeed reminded them in a text message, but Tam and the others had come in a hurry. Furthermore, Feng Ling had been taking care of Li Nanheng last night and had not taken the time to go to Granny Mai's place to ask her to help greet the people in the town. Li Nanheng slept again after taking the medicine in the morning. His stamina could not hold on for too long. Every time he woke up, he would continue to sleep for less than an hour. Thankfully, in the past 2 days, Dr. Mona had been here, and his coughing up blood had lessened a lot. Other than occasionally coughing up some blood foam, he had injured his internal organs. These were unavoidable, and it was good to see him improve in the past 2 days. There was a commotion outside, as though something big had happened. Feng Ling sat in the small room and did not move. When she heard the sound, she glanced out and was guessing if the people from the base and Tam had arrived. At this moment, Carrie ran back from outside. When she saw Feng Ling, her expression suddenly turned awkward. She hesitated for a moment before asking, "Is the helicopter outside looking for you?" Feng Ling stood up. She calculated the time and realized that it was indeed time to arrive. Yes. She didn't expect the man she saved to have such a powerful background. He even had a helicopter, and the people who came seemed to be well trained. They didn't have any intention of hurting or disrespecting the people here. They only said that they were looking for someone and mentioned Feng Ling, Li Nanheng, and Kay's names. The names of these 3 people had been circulating in the Gorkin farm recently. After all, they were 3 outsiders. Everyone would often discuss them quietly. When they suddenly heard their names, they knew that they were indeed here to pick someone up. However, the Israelis had a natural fear of helicopters. Even though they knew the other party's intentions, they were still very vigilant. Many people guarded the entrance of Gorkin Farm and stared at those people. "Who are you people?" Seeing Feng Ling's calm expression, Carrie glanced at her and then at the man who was still sleeping on the bed. "Who is he?" "He is Li Nanheng." Feng Ling did not explain further. Seeing that Feng Ling didn't seem to want to reveal their identities, Carrie's eyes turned red. "So you're leaving now?" Although Feng Ling wanted to hurry up and ask them to send Li Nanheng back to America to find the best hospital for treatment, she glanced at Carrie and thought for a moment before saying, "Miss Carrie, I'm very grateful to you for saving my life. I'm also grateful to the people of Gorkin Farm for their tolerance of us. If you need anything, you can send it to me when we leave, or when we return, we'll send it to you according to your needs, or..." Carrie stared at her in a daze for a long time. She didn't know what she was thinking. After a while, she waited for Dr. Mona to leave before saying, "The people living here don't want to be affected by the war, so they can only hide in this place. They don't dare to go anywhere, not even Jerusalem, so there's no way they can leave." Hearing her words, Feng Ling looked at her quietly, waiting for her to speak. "My grandfather has passed away, and my parents died in an attack on their way to Jerusalem to do business. I've been living with my grandmother on Gorkin Farm, but I know that my grandmother was in China when she was young. I've heard many stories about China since I was young. I think, while my grandmother can still walk, I'll accompany her to China for a walk. Is that okay?" The polite and indifferent expression in Feng Ling's eyes was gradually replaced by warmth. Yes. Really? Really? Then if you want to leave now, we can take you away from Israel and then send someone to send you safely to Granny Mai's hometown when she was young. At this moment, Granny Mai happened to walk in and suddenly heard Fong Ling's words. Her gaze fell on her and Carrie. She looked back and forth for a long time and seemed a little excited. What are you talking about? Carrie excitedly turned around to talk to her grandmother. The grandmother and granddaughter would occasionally communicate in Chinese and occasionally speak the local language out of habit. However, from her tone, it could be heard that Carrie was really happy. Granny Mai was also excited and in disbelief. Fong Ling thought that perhaps it was really difficult for people who lived in such a war-torn country to leave this land. Coincidentally, she felt that she owed Granny Mai and Carrie a favor. It was a good thing that she could give them the greatest satisfaction in this way. There would be no regrets for both of them. After Ah Fong and the others explained to the people of Gorkin Farm, they could finally enter. They tried their best not to barge in or disturb the people. First, they went to the doctor's place to find Kay. Before Kay could react, he was carried onto the plane by a group of brothers. After entering the plane, he was safely put down and laid down. Only then did he react. He was so excited that his eyes turned red. When they arrived at Carrie's residence, the courtyard door was open, and Li Nanheng had just woken up. However, when he woke up, he seemed to be too weak and did not know what was happening outside. Fong Ling heard the uniform footsteps in the courtyard and turned to open the door. Ah Fong and Han Jin had already led a group of elites from the base to stand in 2 rows in the courtyard. They were all looking in the direction of the door. Chapter 1376. Seeing that it was Fong Ling who opened the door, Fong and Han Jin walked toward the door. Fong Ling stood in front of the door and did not move. She looked at them indifferently. Ah Fong was silent for a moment. He suddenly raised his hand and saluted Fong Ling, expressing his apology, his gratitude, and all his emotions. Because she did not give up. She had really found them. Fong Ling did not say anything. She took a step back and made way for them. When Han Jin and Ah Fong walked in quickly and walked past her, she only said, "Be gentle. Don't startle him." Han Jin. Ah Fong. Wasn't this what Li Nanheng used to say when Fong Ling was asleep? However, when they walked in and looked up, they saw the man lying on the bed. The two of them were instantly speechless. Li Nanheng was so thin that he seemed to have become a different person. His once tall and sturdy figure was now thin, and his face was pale. If it weren't for the fact that the man on the bed had guessed the current situation with a cold expression, if his expression could be gentler, he could be considered a handsome young man. He was definitely the thin and gentle type. Unfortunately, even though he was so injured and weak, the coldness in Li Nanheng's unfocused eyes still caused one to shiver instinctively. "Boss." Han Jin hurriedly walked forward, wanting to see how badly he was injured. Li Nanheng raised his hand and waved Han Jin's hand away. He raised his eyes aimlessly and looked around as though he was searching for something. Seeing that he really couldn't see, Han Jin and Ah Fong, who had already known some news before coming, immediately exchanged glances. His eyes really needed treatment, but they didn't know if they could be cured. Thankfully, Fong Ling discovered it early. Otherwise, if he were to be delayed in this place for another 10 days to half a month or a year, boss would really be crippled here. Ah Fong looked out and saw Granny Mai, Carrie, and many curious onlookers outside the yard. Because of Fong Ling's request, he could not be too rude to them. Regardless of whether their language was the same or not, it was not convenient to say too much here. "Help boss onto the plane first. We'll talk later." Ah Fong gave the elites of the base a look as he spoke. When the elite members of the base quickly walked in, they all looked a little excited when they saw their boss, but they didn't dare to say anything and hurriedly went forward to help him up. After all, they were already here. Li Nanheng understood that no matter what he said or did, he couldn't get Feng Ling and the people of the base away, so he didn't speak. When he was carefully helped up by several people, seeing that boss couldn't even stand steadily, Han Jin rushed forward. "Boss! Slow down, you guys. Boss has yet to recover from his injuries. Do you think he'll still be able to do as he pleases?" Be gentle, Han Jin reminded him in a low voice as he helped him up. Li Nanheng didn't mind. His expression didn't change much until he was helped out by a few people. He hadn't seen the sun for several days. When he felt the sunlight after the rain outside, he paused slightly. Feng Ling had just put away some of the clothes he had worn on the bed and walked out. When she saw him pause, she didn't know why, but she instinctively felt that even if his eyes couldn't see, he must be able to feel light. Or perhaps, he could see a little bit of light. Before leaving, Li Nanheng followed Han Jin's hint and found where Carrie and Granny Mai were standing. Even though he didn't have much strength, he still slowly bowed in their direction to express his gratitude. Carrie's hands tightly gripped the cuffs of her cotton dress. This man was indeed very good-looking. Even though he was pale and haggard, when the sun shone on his face, she felt as though his entire body was covered in a layer of light. However, she knew very well that this kind of person didn't belong to the same world as her. Because of saving this man, she and her grandmother were sent out of Israel by these powerful people and could help her and her grandmother realize their dream of safely returning to China. This was really a pleasant surprise. After all, they saved your and Kay's lives. We definitely won't mistreat them. We'll make appropriate arrangements, Han Jin said. Li Nanheng nodded indifferently. Seeing that he couldn't hold on any longer, Feng gestured for them to send him onto the plane. This place was about a few hundred meters away from where the helicopter was parked. Fortunately, the elite team members were very fast and their hands were very steady. After helping Li Nanheng onto the plane, there was already a soft bed prepared in the cabin. They quickly helped him lie down. Feng Ling told Ah Feng about Carrie and Granny Mai's situation. Ah Feng asked someone to help the grandmother and granddaughter pack their things and bring them away now. If they wanted to leave, they had to leave now. If they were late, they could not guarantee the safety of anyone in this country. Less than an hour later, 2 heavy-duty helicopters took off above Gorkin Farm. Granny Mai and Carrie were invited to another plane. There were several elites in the base who would take care of them. After leaving Israel, they would send them to a safe airport and help them apply for their identity, household registration, passports, and so on. It would be convenient for them to fly back to China. They would also leave them a large sum of money so that they could live a stable life after returning to China. In this plane, Kay was originally lying inside. When he heard that Boss had also boarded the plane, he was so anxious that he wanted to get up several times, but he was held down by Tam and Lin Qing. They told him to rest first. After they returned, both of them would be admitted to the hospital for treatment. However, Kay still struggled to get up and looked at the front of the cabin. In the direction Han Jin and Ah Feng's bodies were blocking, he still saw Li Nanheng, who had almost died from his serious injuries. Seeing that Boss had lost a lot of weight, he blamed himself even more. Feng Ling received Kay's gaze and walked over to say, "Lie down properly. Why are you sitting up? I want to see Boss. We'll see when we go back. He needs to rest." From the looks of it, although Kay's leg was broken, at least his internal injuries were not as serious as Li Nanheng's. Kay could still occasionally stay awake for a few hours, but Li Nanheng needed a long time to rest. His stamina and mental state could not bear it for too long. While Feng Ling was talking to Kay, Li Nanheng, who was surrounded by a few people, was lying on the soft bed in the cabin with his eyes closed. He frowned because of the questions from the people around him. Han Jin glared at the elite members until they stopped by the bed. He quickly reached out to help Li Nanheng change his clothes. Li Nanheng raised his hand to stop him and said in a low voice, "I'll change when we go back. There's no hurry." Chapter 1377. Seeing that boss finally spoke, Han Jin's hand paused. "All right, then let's go back and change. According to the current weather and the speed of the plane, it will take at least 7 or 8 hours for us to fly back to Los Angeles. There's no doctor on the plane now. Boss, if you're not feeling well, it's okay. I can endure it." After Li Nanheng said this, he clearly didn't have much strength left. He frowned slightly. It should be because he had just been forcibly carried out of the house and boarded the plane. The air pressure at high altitudes was unstable. Right now, he was no different from a paper man. The slightest fluctuation and the trembling of the plane in the airflow could make him feel uncomfortable. A week later. Los Angeles. Li Nanheng and Kay had been rushed to the hospital for treatment. They had been in the hospital for 6 days. Both of them needed various tests because of chemical poisoning. Their bodies were a little swollen due to the high air pressure on the way back, and their bodies occasionally turned blue. Especially when Li Nanheng was injured in order to save Kay, there were many chemical components in his blood that needed to be tested. After being quarantined and taken care of by more than 10 medical experts for several days, good news finally came. Those chemical poisons were only released in countries at war to stimulate the central nervous system of the local residents and enemies. Although the poisonous smoke was very heavy, fortunately, they had entered the water quickly. Because of the explosion, their bodies were more or less affected by the chemical poisonous smoke. However, after professional serum treatment and detoxification therapy, within a few days, Kay and Li Nanheng's nervous systems gradually recovered their normal functions. Furthermore, when they had just been saved by the people of Gorkin Farm, the medicine used by the local doctor was indeed very effective. It could block the poison that had accumulated in their bodies and almost entered their internal organs. Those medicines were all used by the local doctor, but perhaps the people of countries at war had their own methods to save themselves. The medicine they used was actually very effective. If they hadn't been urgently treated there at that time, even if they were sent back to America, they might not have been able to expel the chemical ingredients so cleanly. It could be considered a close shave. But it was an indisputable fact that Kay had lost a leg. Fortunately, Kay was the one who was saved by Boss. Now he was in a good mood. At most, he would get a prosthetic leg in the future. No matter what, he could live well. Only Li Nanheng's eyes, the doctor said that there was only a 50% chance of recovering his vision. Because he had to find Kay's location when saving him, a normal person should have subconsciously closed their eyes to avoid it, but at that time, he had been searching for Kay with his eyes open and was injured by the poisonous smoke containing chemicals. But after all, this kind of blindness was caused by external forces, not natural blindness. In this kind of situation, there was usually a certain possibility of recovering one's vision, but no one knew when it would recover, or if there was a chance for it to really recover. Kay had been transferred to a general ward and didn't need to continue to be inserted with tubes in the ICU. This hospital had been sealed inside and out, and only the members of the base could enter and exit. After another week, Li Nanheng was successfully transferred to a general ward like Kay, but he still needed medical staff to guard outside 24 hours a day. Fortunately, visitors were allowed to leave the ward at will. In the past half a month, Feng Ling had not entered Li Nanheng's ward. Previously, she only allowed one person to visit him for at most an hour a day. This visiting opportunity was also given to Ah Feng. After all, Feng had to explain many things to Li Nanheng. He also had to report the search situation of the base and the specific casualties to Li Nanhing. In just half a month, it seemed like more than 10 years. Feng Ling stood outside Li Nanhing's ward. After waiting for a moment, she saw Ah Feng, who had just visited him as usual, open the door and walk out. As soon as he saw Feng Ling standing outside, he walked over and asked her with his eyes if she wanted to go in. "Are you awake?" Feng Ling asked indifferently. Feng Ling had never been the kind of person who put her emotions on the surface. In the past few days, she knew that Li Nanhing was here, but she did not come here in vain to fight for the opportunity to visit him, nor did she beg the doctor for anything. She just waited quietly. "He's awake. Do you want to go in?" Ah Feng did not say much. He only smiled lightly and looked at her. Back then, even the brothers in the base had given up, but Feng Ling, who was far away in New York, did not give up. In the end, she did go to find Boss personally, but after successfully bringing him back to the United States, she stood quietly by the side and did not step forward to make any sense of existence. Ah Feng felt ashamed of himself. Feng Ling nodded. Ah Feng smiled and made an inviting gesture. Feng Ling walked in. The door of the ward opened and closed. A man in a light-colored hospital gown was sitting on the bed. Sunlight shone in through the window and fell on his body. The man's hair had grown a little longer because he hadn't taken care of it for nearly a month. In the past, his hair was neat and short, but now it looked clean and stuck to his body. It felt a little soothing. Especially when the sun shone on him like this, he looked warm and cozy. There was a white gauze wrapped around his head from his eyes to the back of his head. It was not very tight, and from this angle, she could see that the gauze around his eyes was a little brown because of the medicine. She did not speak after entering the ward. Li Nanhing's keen senses were enough for him to notice that someone had entered. She did not speak, so he looked in her direction. They looked at each other for nearly a minute. For so many days, Feng Ling had not tried to come in to see him, and Li Nanhing had not asked about her. The woman who had taken the initiative to disappear from his side after sending him back to the United States entered the ward. Li Nanhing seemed to want to use the sunlight in the ward to find some direction, but at this moment, he suddenly heard approaching footsteps. When he felt that someone was suddenly approaching, he raised his cold brows. Before he could speak, he suddenly felt a warm and soft touch on his lips. Li Nanhing's eyebrows twitched at this moment. If his nervous system had recovered and his senses were not confused. Did Feng Ling kiss him as soon as she came in? It was not a kiss. She didn't move away. Instead, she gently sucked on his lips. Li Nanhing's eyebrows twitched again. He subconsciously wanted to retreat, but the woman in front of him grabbed his collar and forced him to retreat. She deepened the kiss. Chapter 1378. The touch on his lips was warm and familiar. It was unbelievably soft, and she had never taken the initiative before. It was as if he was as strong as before, not allowing her to refuse or retreat. She gripped his collar and deepened it again and again. When almost half of Feng Ling's body was leaning against the hospital bed, she simply pressed half of her body against him. If it weren't for the fact that the wounds on his body had mostly healed and he couldn't bear any weight for the time being, she might have pressed him against the bed and pressed him up again. Feng Ling did not say a word. After coming in, she kissed him for a long time. After an unknown period of time, was it about 3 minutes? Or 5 minutes? She slowly moved her lips away from his lips that had turned from cold to warm, but she didn't move far away. Her hand was still holding his neckline, and she looked down at Li Nanhing, who was sitting motionless on the bed with his eyes blindfolded. At this moment, it was clear that his facial expression hadn't completely recovered. After looking at him for a long time, Feng Ling slowly moved her lips. She stared at his face and said clearly, "Your mouth is filled with the taste of medicine. What have you been eating these days?" Li Nanheng did not move. It was as if he instinctively felt that ever since he was injured in Israel and Feng Ling found him, she seemed to have changed from the cold and quiet Feng Ling to another person. She was proactive and determined, making him a little uncomfortable. Even though he couldn't see it with his eyes blindfolded, he could feel that she had been staring at him from a close distance. The man suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. He coughed as though he was clearing his throat. He turned his head slightly and said hoarsely, "The doctor said I can only eat liquid food." It meant that he had been drinking porridge or soup without oil or salt these days. No wonder there was no taste in his mouth. The only taste was the medicine he had to drink 4 or 5 times a day from morning to night. Li Nanheng's body had been severely damaged by the chemical smoke explosion in Israel. Putting aside when his eyes would recover, it would take at least a year and a half for his body to completely return to its previous state. Thankfully, Li Nanheng had a strong physique since he was young. Under such a fatal danger, he was able to survive. After being brought back to the United States, he had been treated for so many days, washed his lungs and cleared his blood. There were also many emergency measures that non-professional medical personnel could not name. Of course, many people said that money could indeed do whatever you wanted. This was clearly reflected in the matter of saving lives in the hospital. The more expensive the medicine, the more expensive the medicine. Whether it was the base or the Li family, they were all thinking of ways to send money over. As long as they could save Li Nanheng healthy, they could even move a mountain of gold to the hospital. Li Nanheng, whose physical fitness had always been very strong, gave them a lot of face. After half a month of uninterrupted treatment, he could be transferred to a general ward more than 10 days earlier than the doctor had expected. Although he was still very weak and was still pale and thin because he could only eat liquid food every day, at least the doctor had given them a very positive answer. He had said that his physical condition was very good. As long as he recuperated for a year and a half and regular systematic rehabilitation, he would definitely be able to return to his previous state after a complete recovery. He would still be the boss Li who had beaten the terrorists like a wolf and a tiger in front of them. This was the best news everyone had heard in the past few days. Kay's condition was also recovering well. The only pity was that he had lost a leg, but Kay's mental state had already adjusted very well. He had seen too many life and death situations. He knew that as long as he survived, it would be a blessing. Feng Ling had not entered Li Nanheng's ward for the past few days. These days, Feng Ling had not entered Li Nanheng's ward. She was just waiting, patiently waiting for Li Nanheng, who was as strong as his body, to face her calmly in this temporarily invisible state. But obviously, in this matter, maybe she really should take the initiative. Feng Ling looked at him and stared at the 2 healed wounds on the side of his face and forehead. There were more wounds on his body, but at least new skin and flesh had grown out and were healing. In the face of modern medical technology, as long as there was enough money, it was very easy to remove scars. However, Feng Ling felt that every wound on Li Nanheng's body seemed to be engraved with the course of this man's life. The doctor has confirmed that your body can recover. It just needs some time. Feng Ling was so close to him and even deliberately spoke to his lips. Li Nanheng, even if you want to die now, I'm afraid it won't be so easy. Do you still refuse to acknowledge me? Perhaps because Feng Ling took the initiative and spoke in a teasing tone, Li Nanheng was stunned for a moment. His eyes were covered with gauze, and she couldn't see the emotions in his eyes. She looked at his face and waited unhurriedly for him to speak again. If Li Nanheng could see now, he would see Feng Ling propping her hands on his hospital bed and leaning over to look at him sitting on the bed at a close distance. There seemed to be light in her eyes, with the passion and persistence that she used to have when she was drunk, and there was a faint expectation hidden under the surface of the persistence. This scene was like a female entrepreneur who, in order to get a man, did not hesitate to injure and lock him in a certain hospital, and then she came to force him to submit. Of course, the premise was that he could see. He couldn't see right now. He didn't know if Feng Ling was sitting or standing right now. He could only feel her eyes on him. Li Nanheng's movements were a little slow as he turned his face to her. It seemed that he wanted to make sure that she was in front of him and look at her through a layer of medical gauze. As if he had really seen her, Feng Ling faced him and slightly raised her beautiful eyebrows. "Why didn't you take the initiative in the past?" The man spoke. His expression was still expressionless, but his voice was no longer so heavy. The smile in Feng Ling's eyes finally rose. Coincidentally, he couldn't see it, so she didn't hide her smile. "It's probably because the two of us are always a strong combination. Both of us have a hard bone and won't give in to each other. It's rare that you're so weak that you can't even beat a finger of mine. My overflowing sympathy and the deep affection you've forced into me over the years suddenly surged. I can't hold it back for a moment." The man's brows moved imperceptibly. He did not speak, but it was clear that he was very convinced by her words. Chapter 1379. Besides, I was the one who brought your life back. If I don't take the initiative, what if you look for Carrie after you can see? Wouldn't I lose more than I gain? As Feng Ling spoke, she reached out to stroke his collar, smoothing out the crease she had just made. Li Nanheng seemed to be puzzled for a moment. "Do you have a deep impression of this Carrie? Do you feel a sense of danger from her existence? If I had known that you would change so much just by being jealous, I would have arranged for a few more women to be by my side." The man spoke shamelessly, but because of his thin and pale state, he looked so harmless when he said these shameless words. "Feng Ling. That's different." The man looked at her and did not speak, but it was clear that he wanted to know what was different about her. Take Feng Mingzhu for example. A person's unilateral initiative and love don't constitute anything. Outstanding people never lack suitors, so even if other women appear by your side, as long as they don't like you, I have nothing to be jealous of. Feng Ling's voice was cold. "But Carrie saved you. I have to admit that if she hadn't brought you back, would you have died there? And later on, she did blush at you. For a young girl to have such a state, it means that she is very superficial and has fallen in love with your appearance, who she has only known for a few days. Furthermore, she has seen you naked." Li Nanheng did not speak for a while. He seemed to be thinking carefully about this question. He was thinking about whether Carrie was really worth his consideration. Seeing that he was actually thinking seriously, Feng Ling's expression paused and she stared at him. "From what you said earlier, I can only conclude 3 points. First, I'm very outstanding." The man's voice was quiet, but he said something that would not make him blush at all. "Second, even though I'm injured to this extent, my looks are still at their peak. Feng Ling, thirdly, you're still brooding over the fact that I've been seen naked by another woman." Her expression was cold. "If a man saw me naked, would you want to dig out his eyes?" Li Nanheng smiled and did not answer her. Instead, he said, "So, you've already helped me repay the favor I owed when I was saved at Gorkin Farm, haven't you?" He seemed to have found a more comfortable sitting position on the bed and could only rest on the hospital bed every day. These days, Li Nanheng was used to this slow pace of life. Perhaps because he had just experienced a life-and-death disaster, his voice was much gentler and calmer. At least, although he was still very shameless just now, he was not particularly asking for a beating. First of all, you didn't gouge her eyes out. Secondly, you personally helped her and her grandmother arrange a trip back to China, including the funds. You helped them realize their dream of returning to a peaceful world from a war-torn land. With this, you've successfully made up for the debt between us. From now on, there won't be any debt of gratitude between us. If I go to find someone to repay my debt of gratitude now, it'll be superfluous. It'll be even more impossible for us to have any contact in the future. Although I've been seen naked, I was injured and covered in blood at that time. It's not a loss for me to be seen by a doctor. If you really feel bad, after I recover, I'll use disinfectant to wash my body 49 times. What do you think? When Feng Ling agreed to send the grandmother and granddaughter back to China, she only wanted to repay their kindness. She did not think too much about it. Li Nanheng's words instantly smoothed out the small knot in her heart that had just emerged. At this moment, Feng Ling's phone suddenly vibrated in her pocket. Although Li Nanheng could not see, when people closed their eyes, their other senses were very sensitive, especially their ears. Hearing that her phone was vibrating, he did not say anything. He was clearly waiting for her to answer the call. The phone vibrated for a long time before Feng Ling took it out of her pocket and looked at it. Seeing that it was Qin Shuk, she picked it up. How is it? Is Li Nanheng out of danger? I really can't go to Los Angeles to see you. If there's anything, you have to tell me. Don't hold it in alone. I understand you very well. You're always like this. You're used to enduring your emotions without batting an eyelid. For example, you actually love him no less than Li Nanheng, but you just don't want to express it. If it weren't for the fact that something happened to him and forced you to run to Israel without any regard for your own safety, even I would have suspected if your heart was made of stone. But in the end, your heart is actually softer than anyone else. It's just that the defenses and walls you erected outside your own world are too high. The ward was very quiet. Even the windows were closed. The sound of her phone was not loud, but it was precisely because it was too quiet that Qin Shuk's grumbling voice clearly reached the man's ears. Feng Ling paused. She wanted to stop Qin Shuk from saying anything, but it was too late. She heard Qin Shuk say, "Also, what do you mean by the silver nameplates you gave me before you left?" At that time, I didn't know at all. 2 days ago, I took the time to send a message to one of Kay's brothers in the base. Only then did I know that handing over those nameplates meant that you were going to participate in a battle that you might not be able to return from. After you die, I'll send these things to the base to comfort your heroic souls. Did you go to Israel with the thought that you might not be able to return? If Li Nanheng knew that you risked your life to go to Israel to find him and even gave me the nameplates, would he explode in anger? Feng Ling. Why do you have so much to say? What's wrong? Aren't I usually like this? Feng Ling hung up the phone. When she placed it in her pocket, she thought for a moment and turned off the phone. When she raised her eyes again, she saw that Li Nanheng was still sitting quietly on the hospital bed. She could not see his eyes, nor could she see any changes in his expression. Feng Ling thought for a moment. Seeing that there was no water by his bedside, she asked, "How long have you been awake?" "When Ah Feng was here, he kept talking to you. Didn't he pour you water?" With that, she turned around to pour a cup of warm water. She tested the temperature herself and confirmed that it was just right. She walked back to the bed and handed the cup to him. The man's fingers moved, and with the help of the touch, he smoothly took the cup. Chapter 1380. However, after he took the cup of water, he didn't drink it, nor did he do anything else. He just sat there with the cup of water in his hand. He didn't look at her, but instead said faintly and slowly, "You went to Israel with the intention of never returning?" As expected, he heard it. Feng Ling did not answer. She only reached out to push his hand that was holding the glass of water. "Drink some water." He did not move. He held the glass of water and said, "If you couldn't find me in Israel for so many days, what would you do? Feng Ling was silent for a moment. But I found you. If you couldn't find me. Li Nanheng's tone sounded very light. Perhaps because his body was too weak, he couldn't be too sonorous, but even his soft words seemed to be powerful in the quiet ward at this moment. Come on, let's make a hypothetical question. If you still can't find it after such a long time, what will you do? Not return to America. Just keep searching like this. Even though you know how chaotic that place is, that there are wars everywhere, that it's barren, and that it might be hit by an airdrop bomb from the sky at any time, you still have to look for me with the thought of never returning. As the man spoke, he placed the glass of water on the blanket covering his legs. He only held it with his hand and did not drink it. Feng Ling did not want to answer this hypothetical question, but she saw that he did not intend to easily ignore this topic. A place like Israel was indeed not a simple country. There were wars everywhere, and it was indeed a country where one step in and one would die. If I can't find you, I'll keep searching, Feng Ling said sincerely. I can search every inch of Jerusalem. I even dare to enter the ancient jungle. If I can't find you in 1 year, I'll search for 2 years. If I can't find you in 2 years, I'll search for 10 years. In short, the light in my life begins when someone walks into my world. I will always look in the direction of that light. Even if I have to search for my entire life, I won't give up. After speaking, she looked at Li Nanheng and instinctively felt that she had never said such sour words to him. She didn't know how he would react after hearing this. Would he be very touched? And then regretted that he had avoided her in Israel a few days ago? Or they would say that she was a simple-minded person, reprimanding her that she shouldn't have such a stubborn way of thinking, and that she should live a good life and so on. In short, she had already thought of what she was going to say next and had already prepared a draft in her mind. In the end, Li Nanheng only slowly picked up the glass, took a sip of the slightly cold water, and put it down. He said very calmly, "The doctor said that I should go home to rest after leaving the hospital. The Li family has already planned to send a car to pick me up in a few days and send 8 or 10 people to guard my bed. I will enjoy the treatment of having my clothes stretched out and food opened by my mouth." Feng Ling, ? Why did he suddenly change the topic? In the next sentence, Li Nanheng said lightly, "It's rare for you to be so affectionate to me, and you can't control your excitement and want to confess to me. I've decided not to return to the Li family. I'll be merciful and go to your place to recuperate. I'll let you enjoy the treatment of having me alone." Feng Ling. Don't you still have an apartment in Los Angeles? Get someone to tidy it up and add some daily necessities. You can move in directly. The apartment space isn't small. I won't mind living there. Let's go there. Feng Ling gradually reacted from Li Nanheng's strange thoughts. Are you talking about the apartment you bought for me? Isn't your apartment above my apartment? What's the difference between this and you going back to your own home? There's indeed no difference. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. The man took another sip of water and didn't mention it again as though this matter had been decided. He handed the glass of water to her. It's cold. Help me change it to a warm one. Feng Ling thought she had heard wrongly. Shouldn't he be very touched? The result of being touched was for her to take care of him while he recuperated. This meant that she didn't have to consider returning to the phone corporation for the time being. She definitely wouldn't have the time to go back. She didn't have to consider the base or anyone else's matters. She just had to focus on accompanying him at home to recuperate. He was recuperating, and she was on vacation. Feng Ling did not move for a long time. Li Nanheng's brows twitched. Earlier, you said that it would be a year, 10 years, or even a lifetime. Now, you're not even willing to pour me another glass of water. Fong Ling silently walked forward to take the glass of water and glanced at Li Nanheng. All right, a leopard cannot change its spots. He was so injured that he needed a year and a half to recover. Even if he couldn't see, he was still Li Nanheng. The key was that he had clearly learned a new skill. He could display his shamelessness to the fullest and did not feel particularly out of place. After pouring another glass of warm water, Fong Ling stuffed the glass into his hand. She watched as he took the glass and drank the water. She watched as his Adam's apple moved as he drank the water. She suddenly remembered that night at Mr. Mike's resort in Washington. When she woke up in the middle of the night, she was on him. She remembered that she had bitten his throat. His position seemed to be particularly sensitive. For some reason, she suddenly noticed his Adam's apple. Perhaps it was because he had lost too much weight, and his originally beautiful and sexy Adam's apple was even more obvious than before. Fong Ling looked away and did not notice that her ears were a little red. Even though Li Nanheng was very active in the treatment, it would still take time for his eyes to recover, including his physical condition. Although his life was definitely saved, his internal organs were injured. In ancient times, internal injuries were internal injuries. Internal injuries were difficult to treat. It was not something that could be cured in a day or two. Everything depended on recuperation. Li Nanheng received absolutely high-standard treatment in the hospital for about a month before he could finally be discharged. The Li family did send a car over, but it was only to send various daily necessities on behalf of elderly. He didn't know how Li Nanheng communicated with the elders of the Li family, but they actually agreed to let him stay at Fong Ling's place alone. They handed over all the work of taking care of him to Fong Ling, who could cook but could not cook more than 3 dishes. Fong also found this unbelievable. Didn't the 4 elders think that Boss would be better taken care of if he returned to the Li family? After all, Boss sometimes even needed someone to help him go to the toilet. However, on the phone, Elder Li's reply to Fong was, "It's okay. As long as he doesn't starve to death." Fong. He put down the phone and silently watched the lucky Li Nanheng get into Fong Ling's car. It's almost the end of the month, right? It's time for the intelligent and beautiful Qing Qing to take off her disguise and start to beg for monthly votes. Chapter 1381. On the way back to the Los Angeles condo, Feng's car naturally followed behind. After all, although Boss was taken away by Fong Ling, there was nothing unsafe about it. The two of them had been entangled for so many years, and Boss Li was personally brought back from Israel by Fong Ling. Nothing would happen to him. However, it was still necessary to see him return to the condo safely with his own eyes. Fong Ling thanked the driver arranged by Fong and drove the G-series Hummer that Li Nanheng used to drive here. Normally speaking, it would be very strange for a woman with long hair to drive this kind of car. After all, this car was too big and had the rugged nature of a classic car that men loved. However, when Fong Ling drove it, it didn't feel so strange. It was probably because everyone knew how good Fong Ling's driving skills were. They also knew that although she looked like a little woman, she didn't lose to men at all. Especially now, Fong Ling often tied her hair into a ponytail, looking energetic and athletic. She was so young and beautiful that people couldn't take their eyes off her. She was no longer the tomboy she used to be, but the most gentle and beautiful scenery in front of these cars. A few black Hummers followed behind the G-series Hummer and sped along the road in Los Angeles. Li Nanheng was helped into the car. He sat in the back row. Although he was wearing clothes, his legs were covered with a soft blanket. The gauze wrapped around his eyes to the back of his head had been removed, but because he still needed to change the dressing every day, his eyes were still covered with medical gauze. Furthermore, the doctor said that his eyes needed to be treated because of the blood clot in his brain and the chemical smoke. Right now, his head couldn't be violently hit or touched. He needed to sit there quietly and couldn't show off even if he wanted to. Although he couldn't see, it didn't mean that he couldn't use his phone. He could still answer the phone and listen to the voice message. Phong Ling was focused on driving. At this moment, Li Nanheng's phone on the back seat buzzed twice. The man moved his hand away from the stall slightly, groped for the position of the vibration, picked up the phone, and placed it by his ear. On the phone, Kay's voice came. "Hey, boss, are you really going back with Phong Ling alone?" Li Nanheng's expression remained unchanged. "Why? Is there a problem?" "It's not a problem." Kay sat in a Hummer behind. He looked at his brother who was driving and said to the phone with a smile, "I just remembered that when we were in Israel, Phong Ling had been holding back her temper for 2 days. I think it's very irrational for you to go back with her like this." Li Nanheng raised his eyebrows. Before he spoke, Kay continued on the phone. "I mean, boss, don't you remember how you mercilessly said you didn't know her when you thought you couldn't live? Aren't you afraid that she'll hold a grudge against you and settle the score with you when there's no one else around? Look at Phong Ling's temper. Right now, she's gentle because you look too weak. She doesn't dare to be too violent, but you know her nature very well. What if she, cough cough? Boss, you understand. I'm just cautiously advising you to avoid this time bomb while you're recuperating. You can flirt with her as you please after you've recovered. Why do you have to risk your life that you've barely managed to get back, don't you think so?" Just then, there seemed to be 2 cars colliding on the road in front of them. The collision shouldn't be serious, but the rear bumper of the car was smashed to the ground, causing a traffic jam on this normally normal road. Seeing that the road ahead was blocked, Phong Ling got out of the car to take a look. The moment Phong Ling opened the door and got out of the car, Li Nanheng replied calmly, "The person you're talking about who mercilessly refused to acknowledge her, is it me?" Kay's words were suddenly choked in his throat. "How could I do such a stupid thing?" "You must have remembered wrongly," Li Nanheng said indifferently and listened to the movements outside the car. At the same time, he listened to the movements outside the car. Phong Ling probably went down to take a look at the situation and then turned back. He said in a low voice, "Don't care about the reason. If she wants my life, she can take it at any time. She doesn't need a reason." After that, he hung up the phone and put the phone on the back seat in a smooth and natural manner. He continued to put his hands on the blanket on his lap, looking like he was going to sit there obediently and not move. "Kay, Boss Lee, you're really something. You can't even move, but you can still be so serious and shameless." It turned out that he also knew that it was an extremely stupid thing to refuse to acknowledge Phong Ling at that time. Even he didn't want to admit it, right? Kay was so angry that he laughed. He put down his phone and rubbed his forehead. A brother of the elite team who was driving in front glanced at him through the rearview mirror. Seeing him lying on his side in the back seat of the car, his eyes were filled with a helpless smile. "Brother Kay, I heard from Brother Phong today that the base has gone to New York's largest medical auxiliary equipment factory to order a very flexible prosthesis at a high price. It will be completed in less than a month and sent to you. At that time, you won't be affected when you walk. Brother Phong also said that you should continue to go back to the sniper team for training. He wants you to practice your one-legged balance and arm support. How is it? Is the arrangement perfect?" Hearing this, Kay raised his eyebrows and then smiled. No matter how rich the base is, it's impossible for them to spend a high price to customize a prosthesis for anyone. This money is either paid by Boss Lee or Phong Ling, right? The brother driving the car smiled. "I can only say that you're bound to have good fortune after surviving a disaster. In the future, the actual combat missions of the base won't fall on you. They can even give you an instructor or something. Every day, you'll go teach those hotheads who just came in, show them your prosthesis, and tell them the story of how you once risked your life for the base. Just thinking about it makes me happy. Happy. Why don't you King crawl out of a pile of dead people and break a leg? Let me exchange with you. Do you like it? Kay grabbed a bottle of mineral water in the car and smashed it on the back of his head. Damn it, it hurts. The brother driving the car chuckled, picked up the bottle of mineral water, put it aside, and continued to follow the car in front. When Fong Ling returned to the car, she saw that Li Nanheng had hung up the phone. She didn't hear what he was saying earlier. Seeing that he was sitting there with a normal expression, she didn't know if he was closing his eyes to rest, so she didn't say much. She started the engine, turned the car around, and drove to the other fork in the road. Chapter 1382. The car was parked in the apartment that they hadn't returned to for a long time. Ah Fong and the others originally wanted to come over to help Li Nanheng, but half of Li Nanheng's weight was almost on Fong Ling. He did not ask them to help him and calmly got out of the car. Seeing this, Fong felt that it was too immature to pull boss away from Fong Ling at this time. He quickly ordered someone to bring all the necessary luggage and medicine out of the car and sent them in first. When Li Nanheng was brought into the main entrance of the apartment, everything was ready. Fong Ling helped Li Nanheng stand in the elevator and looked at the slowly rising number on the elevator. She said, "Do you want to go to my place or yours?" "Whatever." The man breathed in the clean scent of shower gel on her body and answered. Fong Ling had never been to her apartment here before. She only knew that it had been renovated by Li Nanheng. It had been so many years. A while ago, she sent someone over to tidy up and fill in many necessary things. She then received a few photos of her apartment. It looked not bad. Although it was renovated a few years ago, after Li Nanheng's efforts, all the expensive light industrial materials and furniture were used. They were all in a light European style. The overall color was white, gray, and blue. It was very fresh and clean. It was different from his floor above. His floor was a very tough man living alone. Fong Ling pondered for a moment, chose to stop on the floor of her apartment, and helped him out of the elevator. Although her apartment was downstairs from his apartment was on the top floor. The two apartments on the top floor were completely connected. It was a few hundred square meters, and there was some distance to walk from one bedroom to the other. The next floor was a normal apartment. At least her apartment was half the size of his, so it was not a waste of time to walk back and forth. As for which room Fong Ling took him to, Li Nanheng had no doubt. He even felt that it was not bad to change places. After entering the apartment, Fong Ling had never been here. Although it was afternoon, the curtains were closed. She fumbled on the wall for a long time before she found the light switch. After turning on the light, she helped him in. After helping Li Nanheng to sit on the sofa, she hurriedly went to pack up. Listening to the rustling sounds of Fong Ling packing up her things, Li Nanheng sat calmly on the sofa, covered with his blanket, and turned his head to ask, "Are you very tired?" "I've just come back and it's already so tiring. Should I ask the Li family to send a car over?" No need. Fong Ling was bringing the medicine she brought back into the fridge. Li Nanheng's eyes needed to be iced with the medicine every night before he could sleep, so these things had to be placed in the fridge in advance. Li Nanheng didn't really intend to pick up the phone to call the Li family. He just sat on the sofa and listened to the rustling sounds. He heard Fong Ling walking back and forth in indoor slippers, but because she was unfamiliar with her own home, she couldn't find the bedroom and storage room, so she walked back and forth several times. He heard her sigh helplessly and then continued to busy herself. Li Nanheng slowly curved his lips. "Are you hungry?" Feng Ling had already begun to pack her and Li Nanheng's luggage. As she hung the clothes in the cabinet one by one, she asked the man sitting on the sofa in the living room outside. "I'm not hungry." "Then wait a little longer. I'll make something to eat after I pack up." As Feng Ling spoke, her hand would touch the cabinet door from time to time, making some knocking sounds. It was as though a kind of human activity kept flashing in his ears. Li Nanheng couldn't see it, so he just sat on the sofa and stared straight ahead, listening to those sounds. When Feng Ling finally finished packing, she rushed over to help him up. "Do you want to go to the bathroom? I'll help you over." Li Nanheng had been sitting on the sofa for so long and was very obedient. Because of his obedient performance, Feng Ling instinctively felt that she could take him to the bathroom once. Although it was Han Jin and the others who helped him to the bathroom in the hospital a while ago, she basically didn't interfere much. However, as soon as she finished speaking, her voice was choked in her throat. Then she saw that Li Nanheng's facial expression seemed to have changed. Upon closer inspection, his facial muscles seemed to be trembling slightly as though he was holding back his laughter. She pursed her lips and glared at him, but thinking that he couldn't see that she was glaring at him, she simply retracted her gaze and looked in the direction of the bathroom awkwardly. "I mean, I'll help you to the bathroom and help you find the location of the bathroom and the toilet. This way, you can go by yourself in the future." Speaking up to here, she added, "When I called someone over to clean up this place, I specially told them not to leave any messy things on the ground. I even moved the coffee table here because I was afraid that you would bump into something or trip over something when walking back and forth. There's no carpet. It's very flat. You can walk back and forth like this a few times and you'll be familiar with the route." "Okay." The man held back his laughter, but his chest still emitted a little laughter. "All right, then there's a prison. CEO Feng, help me go a few times first. Also, I can't find the location of the toilet. Can you help me hold it?" Hearing this, Feng Ling was about to help him walk there when her ears suddenly turned hot. For some reason, she felt that he said help him hold it. This help meant, "Li Nanheng, you have to understand your current situation. Your martial arts value is so poor that you can be suffocated to death with a pillow at any time. Are you sure you want to mess around in front of me?" Feng Ling changed from supporting him to pulling him over. When they arrived at the bathroom door, she opened the door and gently pushed him from behind. "Go in yourself. Walk 2 meters forward and then turn right. Walk another meter until you find a metal rod hanging a towel. In front of the metal rod is the toilet. Touch it yourself and you'll find it." After saying that, he directly closed the door of the bathroom. "You just pushed me in like this. The belt on my pants hasn't been untied. Aren't you going to come in and help me?" The door was closed, and the man's somewhat muffled voice came from the empty bathroom. Feng Ling's lips twitched and she glanced at the door behind her. "It's not like it's tied into a dead knot. Can't you open it yourself?" Then there was no movement from inside. After a while, there was the sound of someone standing in the bathroom. Feng Ling turned her head and left. When she heard the flushing sound, she waited for a while. She guessed that he had already put on his pants and then walked back to open the door. When she opened the door, she saw that Li Nanheng had accurately found the location of the sink and was leaning against the edge of the marble counter to wash his hands. Chapter 1383. She didn't know if it was because he was in the hospital a few days ago that she couldn't see or touch him. Now that she heard the sound of the water and saw the man standing there alive, the light in the bathroom falling on his head, and the way his hair was slightly longer, she finally felt that this man was standing in front of her. "Do you want me to shave your hair?" Feng Ling asked curiously. Li Nanheng casually turned off the faucet, raised his hand, and waved it in the air. He touched the towel, wiped his hand clean, turned around, and slowly walked out in the direction of her. Seeing that he was able to find all the directions and angles in the bathroom so quickly, Feng Ling took a step back in front of the door to give him space. When Li Nanheng successfully walked out with his own sense of direction, she looked in the direction of the sofa and said, "Do you want to try walking to the sofa from here?" However, the man did not move. He stood in place and slowly raised his hand, indicating that he wanted her to support him. Feng Ling was confused. It was clearly a straight line from here to the sofa. It shouldn't be difficult to find him. There were so many things in the bathroom, but he could find them clearly. "I can't walk anymore. I'm tired." The man gave her a concise answer. Feng Ling, however, his body was indeed very weak. It was normal for him to lose strength after a few steps. She could only support him back. When he sat down again, she heard the man casually say, "Why do you suddenly want to shave my hair? I see that your hair has grown longer." As she spoke, she reached out her hand and touched his hair. It was about 3 centimeters longer than usual. His usually cool hairstyle now looked inexplicably obedient. "I remember that you only know how to shave to the shortest length with a razor. You don't have any style at all." Li Nanheng did not hide his disdain for her. "Fortunately, I stopped you from shaving your head. Otherwise, I'm afraid your little nun appearance would have added a very thick stroke to your past life. Feng Ling, let's not do it for now. I can't see it anyway. Whether it's long or short, ugly or good-looking has nothing to do with me. At most, it'll just be an eyesore for you." As Li Nanheng spoke, he fumbled to pick up the blanket on the sofa again. He consciously covered his legs with the blanket and said slowly, "I'm hungry. There are no ingredients at home." Seeing that he was a patient, Feng Ling didn't argue with him. She secretly rolled her eyes at him and picked up her phone. "I'll see if there are any fresh ingredients in the nearby supermarket. I'll ask them to send them up." "Yes." After making the call, Feng Ling asked a few questions and then turned to look at Li Nanheng. "What do you want to eat?" "Fish." Feng Ling paused. She apologized to the other side of the phone and hung up. She turned back to say, "The nearby supermarket doesn't have any fresh fish. Unless we go to a large supermarket further away to buy it, or go to a seafood market, can't we do something else?" The man was silent for a moment. She didn't know if he was thinking about changing or if he really wanted to eat fish. Feng Ling saw that it was getting late and that it would be a waste of time to delay any longer. She made a decision. "Let's eat something simple today. I'll drive to buy fish tomorrow, okay?" The word "okay" carried an inexplicable warmth and a doting tone that she had never heard from her mouth before. It was a little like her attitude when she spoke to little Momo, but she had thrown away the deliberately soft tone she used to speak to children. It was clearly a very natural tone, but it made Li Nanheng feel as if his soul was about to sublimate. If he had known that being injured and blinded could exchange for this side of Feng Ling, he would have long poked his eyes. And the man answered reluctantly. In fact, Feng Ling also felt that the liquid food and nutritious meals he had eaten in the hospital a few days ago were indeed too unpalatable. Even though they were all prepared by top nutritionists, they were all tasteless. Furthermore, they were all prepared for nutrition and did not take into account normal human tastes at all. It was as if Li Nanheng had eaten plain water for so many days. Now that he was discharged, although he still had to eat less oil and salt, he could at least eat something tasty normally. She did not want to mistreat his stomach. After all, he had really lost too much weight. Compared to when he was still in Washington, he had lost at least 15 pounds. She had to feed him back these 15 pounds as soon as possible. In the evening, Feng Ling used the fresh ingredients delivered by the supermarket near her home to make a few dishes. Of course, they were all easy to digest with less oil and salt. While she was busy in the kitchen, her phone was still on the page of nutritional recipes and various recipes. After taking the medicine, Li Nanheng had already closed his eyes to rest on the sofa for several hours. Feng Ling asked him to go back to the bedroom to sleep, but he did not go. He only said that he would sleep more soundly if he listened to her busy movements in the kitchen. Feng Ling could not understand, but she let him be. After all, he did not have the strength to run outside by himself. Just as she finished cooking, Feng Ling washed her hands and walked out of the kitchen. At this moment, she heard the doorbell ring and rushed to open the door. However, as soon as she opened the door, she saw Xiao Su standing outside the door, holding 2 old hens in his hands. His expression was slightly twitching, as though he was very afraid of the 2 chickens in his hands. "Why are you?" Before Feng Ling could speak, Xiao Su quickly brought the 2 old hens in. As the chickens' feet were tied, they were not afraid that they would run away. They just fell to the ground and clucked. Feng Ling was a little dumbfounded by this scene. "That cousin of yours, her name is Qin Shuk, isn't it? I don't know where she found my phone number, but she asked me to send you 2 old hens. She said that she wanted Boss Lee to drink chicken soup to nourish his body, in case you couldn't buy good chickens in those markets. She also said that she specially asked someone to go to the farm to find 2 fat and big ones. Then, just these 2. With that, Xiao Su took a step back in disgust. "I'm not even afraid of carrying a gun to the battlefield, but I've been afraid of these sharp-tongued things since I was a child. She actually asked me to send chickens over. Damn it." Feng Ling was looking down at the 2 chickens when Li Nanheng's voice interrupted from the sofa behind her. "I'm recuperating, not in confinement. Why did you send me hens?" Xiao Su chuckled. "Boss, you have to be convinced. Your current state is even worse than others in confinement. Next time, I'll ask someone to get you 2 black chickens to nourish your blood. Look at your pale face. After so many days, you still look like a little boy. I'm afraid you're so weak that you can't even lift a chicken, ha ha ha." Chapter 1384. Before Xiao Su finished speaking, he suddenly hiccuped and glanced at Li Nanheng carefully. He saw that Boss Li didn't seem to be angry at all. On the contrary, he seemed to be very satisfied with this situation where he was very weak and needed to be taken care of by Feng Ling, and he didn't feel sad at all. TSK, he didn't even plan to choose whether to return to the Li family or come to Feng Ling's place. From the beginning, he had planned to be with Feng Ling. After all, for so many years, whether it was in the base or after they left the base, the 2 of them seemed to have very little time to be alone. They were always busy. As for the days when they lived in the jungle, Xiao Su certainly didn't know, but he could guess something. "Do you know how to kill chickens?" Xiao Su turned to look at Feng Ling and asked a key question. Feng Ling hesitated for a moment and answered, "Yes." Hearing this, Li Nanheng, who was about to ask Xiao Su to clean up the 2 chickens before leaving, choked on his words. He raised his eyebrows and symbolically looked in the direction of the door. Xiao Su also felt that it was impossible. He looked at Feng Ling seriously. "Really? I've never seen you kill one before. I can even kill people, let alone kill chickens. Isn't it just cutting the neck?" Feng Ling said indifferently and gave up some space in front of the door. "Do you want to come in and sit?" No, I won't come in." Xiao Su quickly took a step back and waved his hand in resistance. He didn't know if he was afraid of the 2 chickens on the ground or the Boss Lee on the sofa who he had just said couldn't even beat a chicken, but he glanced at Feng Ling worriedly. "Then remember to clean it up. Don't let the chicken soup be full of feathers." Feng Ling said coldly, "Why don't you stay and do it?" "Forget it. I really can't stand this kind of sharp-mouthed thing. I dare to kill a snake. I'm afraid of this kind of thing." Xiao Su waved his hand again. "I'm leaving. Take good care of boss and your body. Don't let our boss do whatever he wants." Feng Ling continued to glance at him coldly, wondering what else Li Nanheng could ask for except to cook and help him to go to the toilet. After all, how could a seriously injured patient act like a hooligan? She didn't say anything, and Xiao Su tactfully stopped talking. He wiped his nose and ran away as if there was oil under his feet. Feng Ling closed the door and bent down to pick up the 2 chickens. The 2 chickens probably knew that they were about to die. Their cackling became sharper and sharper. Feng Ling brought them into the kitchen. After that, Li Nanheng didn't hear any movement other than the roosters crowing. He was suspicious and was about to find the direction of the kitchen when he suddenly heard a few dang 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 sounds and the roosters crowing disappeared. Feng Ling clapped her hands, washed them, and walked out. Their eyes met. She looked at him. "What are you doing?" Li Nanheng. It was easy to imagine the scene where she knocked the 2 chickens unconscious with some unknown object. Li Nanheng suddenly smiled and sat back on the sofa with a sigh. "As expected of the woman I taught." Feng Ling glanced at him. "Boss Li, who personally taught me how to kill people with a gun, would you feel that my hands are stained with blood just because I knocked out 2 chickens?" "No, no." Li Nanheng chuckled. "I'm just afraid that you're not decisive enough. If your hand is pecked by them again, my heart will ache. We're all ordinary people standing at the top of the food chain. No one is more noble than the other. It's just 2 chickens. After all, you still have to kill fish tomorrow." Feng Ling glanced at him. "You still haven't forgotten your fish." Li Nanheng leaned back comfortably on the sofa. "And I have chickens, fish, and a wife. I'm afraid this is the most perfect moment in my life." Feng Ling ignored his flattery and said, "The food I just cooked is almost cold. Xiao Su didn't say to stay for dinner. If you don't eat, I'll eat by myself." Li Nanheng raised his hand on the sofa. "I can't find the dining table." Feng Ling walked over to help him up. When the man was helped up, he seemed to be doing something. He turned his head and sniffed her neck. Feng Ling was provoked by his action and quickly dodged to the side. She looked at him strangely. "What are you smelling?" "Smell to see if there's the smell of chicken blood." "I haven't killed it yet. Today's meal is ready. Let's talk about it tomorrow or the day after tomorrow." Feng Ling helped him to the dining table and sat down. She picked up the cutlery and placed it in his hand. Then she stood by the dining table and watched his hand slowly fumble on the table. She asked, "Do you need me to feed you?" In the past few days in the hospital, Li Nanheng had been fed by others. Because he couldn't see, no matter what cutlery he used, it was indeed difficult to find the exact position of the bowl. However, now that he was discharged from the hospital, he really didn't want to be fed again, so he didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out and touched the edge of the bowls in front of him with the cutlery. Feng Ling probably saw through his intentions and didn't touch him anymore. Instead, she carefully pushed the bowls and plates to a place where his cutlery could easily reach. If there was a slight deviation, she would immediately push his cutlery to the middle and pick up the food in the middle. Li Nanheng tried to eat it himself and smiled. "It tastes good. Your cooking skills are much better than when you roasted earthworms and cooked wild birds in the jungle." "Why? Haven't you been busy with the phone corporation's business for the past 2 years? You actually have the time to secretly practice cooking." "I haven't practiced, and I really don't have the time. I don't know much now, but at least I can eat my fill." When he went to pick up the food, Feng Ling slowly moved the bowl in front of him. As she moved, she said, "When I was in England, and later in the phone corporation, I wasn't used to having someone take care of me. Qin Shuk didn't know how to cook, so I was used to making some food for myself occasionally. Perhaps I did make some progress, but it shouldn't be too obvious." Li Nanheng chuckled and reached out with the cutlery again. Then, he gently pressed the edge of the soup plate in front of him with the cutlery. "All right, you don't have to keep moving with me. I can almost find it. At most, I'll just spill some soup and water and wipe it off. You just need to practice a few times. Sit down and eat with me." Feng Ling moved the bowls and plates very softly. She didn't expect him to hear it. She didn't say much but glanced at his precise movement of putting the cutlery in. Although it was still a little awkward, with his adaptability, she estimated that in 2 or 3 days, he should really be able to eat like an ordinary person. "I want to chat with more like-minded people about, young Master Mo, have you kissed enough, talk about life, and find a confidant W. 4M. Chapter 1385. After the meal, Feng Ling carefully went to cut some fruits. They were all soft fruits such as bananas and grapes. She cut them into small pieces and placed them in Li Nanheng's hand. Right now, Li Nanheng was covered with a blanket and continued to sit on the sofa obediently. He held a small fruit plate in his hand, and there was a small fork of fruit on it. When he was stuffed over, Li Nanheng chuckled. When he heard Feng Ling turn around to busy herself again, he said, "Are you sure you want to take care of me like this every day? It's fine for 1 or 2 days, but I don't know how long it will take. I think it's better to hire an auntie to help you. The kind that works at a fixed time every day." Feng Ling did not answer. She had already gone to the bathroom to do something else. After she was done, she came out and seemed to have found the time to answer him. "There's no need for the time being. With the amount of medicine you take every day and the rehabilitation exercises you need to do every day, I think you'll recover in less than half a year. Your physical strength has already recovered a lot. The rest is just the functions of your body. It's not like you can't get out of bed. There's no need to hire an auntie." Li Nanheng looked for her voice and turned his head slightly. "What are you doing? Eat some fruit first. Although I've already hired someone to clean up the house, I'm afraid it's still not clean. After all, everyone knows that you're a clean freak," Feng Ling said calmly. Feng Ling's tone was very normal as she said, "I'll disinfect the bathroom again. I'll help you take a bath later." "How can I be so clean freak?" Li Nanheng sighed. It was because he really couldn't see, but he knew that Feng Ling hadn't been idle since she came back. He raised his hand and waved at her. "Come here." Feng Ling didn't understand and walked over. "What's wrong? Come closer." Just as she was about to ask him what he was going to do, the man suddenly raised his hand and accurately held her wrist. As she was caught off guard, he gently pulled her, causing her to stumble forward. Subconsciously afraid that she would hurt him, she quickly raised her hand to support herself on the back of the sofa behind him. In the end, half of her body weight was almost pressed against him. She raised her hands weakly to support herself on the back of the sofa behind him. She lowered her head and her lips almost hit his straight nose. The man took the opportunity to casually lean against the back of the sofa, slightly raising his head with an expression of enjoyment as though he had been hit by the sofa. He slightly raised his brows. "What are you doing?" Feng Ling lowered her head and glared at him at such a close distance. "I should be the one asking you what you want to do." The man chuckled. "I asked you to sit down and rest for a while. Why are you pressing down on me?" Feng Ling looked at him speechlessly, but with a layer of gauze in front of her eyes, she couldn't see his eyes, so she could only step back without saying anything. However, the back of her waist suddenly tightened. The man had probably gathered all the strength in his body on that arm and firmly tied her up. This time, even though Feng Ling sensed it and was prepared, she was still pressed against him by his sudden strength. This time, Feng Ling lowered her head and her nose almost hit his collarbone. She quickly tilted her head slightly and her lips brushed against the man's carotid artery. She could feel the obvious frequency of his artery under his warm skin. Li Nanheng lowered his head and kissed her forehead. Feng Ling was about to break free from him, but because of his sudden kiss, she paused. She did not move but only whispered, "I'm pressing against your wound. Doesn't it hurt? It's already healed. It'll be fine after some rest. You're not heavy. It doesn't hurt at all." The man hugged her tighter. "I said I wanted you to take care of me because I just want to be alone with you. There's no need to be so busy. I'm just blind, not paralyzed in bed. There's no need to be so meticulous, and..." Feng Ling was silent for a while before she softly responded with an N. She did not dare to speak again, because as soon as she spoke, her lips would brush against his carotid artery. The real frequency of his beating made her heart tighten. She could feel his vitality at all times and feel that he was alive in front of her. "Sit down and rest for a while. I can take a shower myself. We'll talk about this later," Feng Ling said softly. Feng Ling said in a low voice. She couldn't stand being pressed against his neck and quickly pushed back. At the same time, she gently pushed him away. Li Nanheng did not force her, but when she got up, his hand seemed to accidentally brush against her ear and felt that it was slightly hotter than usual. He turned his head in her direction. Feng Ling coughed and ran into the bathroom to disinfect. This time, she simply closed the bathroom door to prevent him from hearing the sound of her washing the bathtub. In fact, it was not suitable for Li Nanheng to take a bath right now. Feng Ling weighed the pros and cons for a long time. Even though the bathtub had been disinfected, in the end, she only let him take a simple shower. The bathroom was too hot, and it was not good for his body or the recovery of his wounds. Although the wounds had healed, there was only a thin layer of new skin on the surface. He could not soak in a hot bath for too long. Li Nanheng's current physical strength was much better than when he had just returned to Los Angeles, but he had also fixed his sleeping time and biological clock in the hospital every day. Thus, before 9:30 p.m., he was brought into the bedroom by Feng Ling. Feng Ling tidied the soft blanket on the bed, helped him sit down, and lay down. Even though Li Nanheng wanted her to rest early, Feng Ling said that she would wait a while because she had not showered and changed her clothes. When she went out to drink a glass of water and returned, the man had already taken the medicine after showering. Due to the medicine, he had already fallen asleep. Feng Ling gently closed the door, not wanting to wake him up. The next day, Li Nanheng was woken up by a series of dang-dang sounds. It was not a shock, but at least he knew where he was even when he was asleep. He knew that he was in Feng Ling's apartment. In the end, there was such a sound early in the morning. The man opened his eyes. It was still dark, but after applying herbal ice to his eyes last night, his eyes were no longer covered with gauze. He tried to find his way in the darkness, lifted the blanket, and got off the bed. He fumbled in the bedroom for a long time and turned around. In the end, his leg still hit a single sofa very close to the bedroom door. The sound of the collision was not loud, and his body did not fall down. However, Feng Ling heard the noise outside. She threw down the half-slaughtered chicken and quickly walked back. She pushed the door open and saw Li Nanheng groping in the air. "I want to chat with more like-minded people about, young Master Mo, have you kissed enough? Talk about life, and find a confidant W. 4M." Chapter 1386. Seeing that one of his legs was blocked by the sofa, Feng Ling asked in surprise, "When did you wake up?" "I just woke up." Li Nanheng put down his arm and turned to her. "What was the sound outside just now?" "Ah, I was killing the chicken." "Did it disturb you?" "You know how to kill." "I looked it up on the internet and saw a tutorial on killing chickens. I tried to kill one. It's not bad. It's quite successful." Feng Ling held the door handle with one clean hand, and her other hand was stained with blood. She was wearing the Qian family's home clothes, and her long hair was tied behind her head. She looked gentle and indifferent, but when she spoke of killing a chicken, her expression did not change. "Li Nanheng, there's a tutorial for this thing." "Yes." Feng Ling then looked at his legs. "Move your legs 10 centimeters to the right, and then walk forward to the bedroom door. The bedroom door is about 6 or 7 meters away from the sofa in the living room. There are no obstacles in the middle. Can you come out by yourself?" "Yes." "All right, I'll continue to kill." With that, Feng Ling opened the bedroom door for him and turned to return to the kitchen. Li Nanheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He moved his legs away from the sofa in the bedroom according to the route she said, and successfully left the bedroom. He then slowly moved forward and measured the distance according to his steps. After confirming the position, his legs did touch the edge of the sofa in the living room. He touched the back of the sofa and looked back for the sound of the kitchen. Imagining the scene of Feng Ling killing the chicken, he suddenly remembered what Kay had said on the phone about not acknowledging her. Li Nanheng's heart trembled. He turned and walked in the general direction of the kitchen. He raised his hand and touched the wall that he almost hit, then walked along the wall to the kitchen door and poked his head in. Feng Ling was squatting on the ground and immersed in fighting. Hearing the movement, she turned back and saw Li Nanheng with a pair of unfocused eyes looking at her. His inexplicable desire to survive made Feng Ling's eyes twitch. "Do you need help?" Li Nanheng asked. Feng Ling glanced at him. "What can you help with?" Under normal circumstances, Li Nanheng's heart was absolutely strong. Even when he was mocked by Feng Ling, he did not feel like he had been shot. Perhaps it was because he felt that he would not be able to survive in Israel that he avoided people. Otherwise, with his strong heart, as long as he did not face death, even if Feng Ling was angry at him because he could not see, he would not be hurt. The man revealed half of his head in front of the kitchen door and said thoughtfully, "Standing by the side to command you." "My knife is a chicken wing. Do I need you to command me?" Feng Ling continued to lower her head to fiddle with the chicken that had almost been cleaned. "It's not like we're in the base. Why do I need you to tell me how to use the gun?" Li Nanheng stood in front of the door and smiled. Feng Ling lowered her head to deal with it for a while and suddenly turned back to see that Li Nanheng had not left. There was no gauze around his eyes. Even if he couldn't see, it was really, "Can you go back to the sofa and sit down? I'll apply medicine to your eyes later. Don't stand here." "What? If you stand here, I can't cut down." Li Nanheng raised his eyebrows as if he understood. He nodded, turned around, and walked forward, touching the air. After cleaning up the mess in the kitchen, Feng Ling cleaned up her somewhat disheveled clothes and went to take a shower. After taking a shower, she went to bring the medicine that the doctor had instructed her to apply to his eyes every day. Feng Ling's movements were very gentle. Every time she applied the medicine for him, it was as though she was afraid of touching his eyes, but she had no choice but to touch them with her fingers. Li Nanheng closed his eyes and sat on the sofa. He said slowly, "If my eyes can't recover for the rest of my life, you can't apply medicine for me like this for the rest of my life." "Why not?" Feng Ling's tone was calm. She was not affected by his words at all. She patiently played with the gauze in her hand. The doctor said that it's just because of the blood clot in your brain that oppresses your optic nerves and some chemical smoke. It'll recover. You might be able to see suddenly, or you might not be able to see for 10 or 20 years. You just follow the doctor's instructions every day. You'll always remember me. From your tone, it seems that you really love me, a disabled person who can't see. You don't dislike me at all. The man smiled. Feng Ling helped him apply the gauze and stepped back to check if it was neatly applied. She then stepped forward to adjust the gauze on his left eye. As she did so, she said, "Of course not. You've seen me when I was in my teens and when I was in my 20s. You've seen me when I was at my most beautiful and will always remember me. And, so. If you really can't see in the future, it's not bad. At least you won't be able to see my old appearance." Feng Ling moved her hand away from the gauze on his eye. She was satisfied that her ability to apply medicine and gauze on him was getting better and better. She was about to walk away when her wrist suddenly felt heavy. The man suddenly held her hand. "I want to see it." He held her hand. His voice was calm, but there was a certain firmness in it. What did he want to see? To see her slowly grow old in the next few decades. This inexplicable and obscure agreement that the two of them would slowly grow old together made her heart beat faster. Feng Ling lowered her eyes to look at the hand he was holding. She composed herself for a moment and said, "There's something you haven't answered me." "What?" "About Tming and the 1 billion yuan financing. How did you know that these were the two things I wanted to do the most? Including the clean funds left by Tming, which could be used to fill the Feng Corporation's treasury and use for emergency funds. Everything happened to help me. Did I really say something to you after I drank too much?" Li Nanheng curved his lips slightly and released his hand from her wrist. He calmly tugged the thin blanket on his leg up. "Don't you know what you're like after you drink too much?" "Of course not." Li Nanheng smiled. "At that time, you hugged my leg and called me hubby. You softly begged me to help you get rid of Tming and Feng Mingyi. You begged me to help you get rid of Tming and Feng Mingyi. You begged me to help you settle the 1 billion yuan financing. Seeing how you begged me, I couldn't bear to do it. After leaving the resort, I did it." Feng Ling, she turned to look around and suddenly looked in the direction of the kitchen. Li Nanheng raised his brows. "Why aren't you speaking? What are you doing?" Feng Ling's face was expressionless. "I'm looking for the knife I used to kill the chicken." Li Nanheng. "Ha. Dash, I just noticed that I actually have double monthly votes again. It's the end of the month. Dads with monthly votes, please pamper me. I want to chat with more like-minded people about, young Master Mo, have you kissed me enough, talk about life, find a confidant W. 4M. Chapter 1387. Los Angeles, the Li family. I didn't expect Feng Ling to take care of Nanheng by herself. She's taking good care of him. The third elder of the Li family received a report from the front line and sat leisurely in the back garden of the Li family, drinking tea and speaking. The fourth elder of the Li family, who was walking and feeding the birds in the back garden, glanced at him. "Where did you get the news?" "I bribed Xiao Su, who often follows Nanheng, and asked him to visit Nanheng and Feng Ling's place every few days to deliver things. Even if it arouses their suspicion, it won't be a big deal. At most, we'll just treat it as us being worried about them," the third elder of the Li family said. "I heard from Xiao Su that Nanheng has been recuperating at Feng Ling's place for half a month after he was discharged from the hospital. His complexion looks much better. And because Feng Ling is with him every moment of the day, the effect of his recovery should be better than anywhere else." The fourth elder of the Li family sneered. Back then, when Nanheng was young, He was so mischievous that it was common for him to jump into a well in his own back garden. Back then, we all thought that this brat would definitely be an unruly ruffian when he grew up. Who knew that after leaving him in the base for so many years, he would become an infatuated man in the blink of an eye. He only cares about his wife and doesn't care about anything else. He really takes after his grandfather's personality. At this moment, Nanheng's grandfather, the eldest of the Li family, Li Junyan, had just walked out with a walking stick. When he heard this, he glanced at them. "What do you mean takes after me? Nanheng's infatuation is too similar to when you were young. If his grandmother hadn't passed away early, you would still be doting on your wife like she's your ancestor." The third elderly smiled. Li Junyan's expression was cold and he was too lazy to speak. At this moment, the second elder of the Li family interrupted with a smile. "In the past few decades, our big brother has only been deeply in love with Nanheng's grandmother. He really can't be bothered to look at other women. Even his strange preference for men is very similar to us brothers. Nanheng's grandmother must have accumulated several generations of virtue for our big brother to be so loyal." The fourth elder smiled. "That's right. In Big Brother's eyes, there is only one woman in this world, and that is Nanheng's grandmother. The other women are all pink holes, and they are all crying. None of them can enter his eyes." Li Junyan, third elderly, raised his eyebrows and said, "That's why I say that although Nanheng is a rascal, he still carries on the good tradition of our old Li family in his bones. Once he has set his mind on one woman, the other women are all fleeting. Just this one is enough to make him hover between life and death. I just don't know when he can marry her." I think it's going to be difficult." Second brother suddenly sneered and shook his head. The three elders turned to look at Li Tianlan in unison. "What's so difficult about it?" Second elderly raised his half-white eyebrows. "He's so badly injured. Right now, he's so weak that he can't even defeat a little girl like Feng Ling. I wonder if he still has the ability to carry on the family line." The old men fell silent at the same time. "No way. I don't think so. Our grandson knows what he's doing. When the explosion happened, he would definitely have blocked it, right? It's hard to say. What if there really is a problem?" The boss of the Li family, Li Junyan, suddenly coughed coldly and cleared his throat. The other three quickly shut their mouths. Li Junyan said with a cold expression, "From tomorrow onwards, ask that Xiao Su to send them more tonics every day. Make up for whatever they lack. Sea cucumber, deer penis, bull penis, and all sorts of things to strengthen their vitality and nourish their kidneys." In the morning, Feng Ling did the same thing as she did every day. She applied medicine on Li Nanheng's eyes and massaged his head to relieve the pressure on his optic nerves caused by the blood clots. When the doorbell rang, she didn't need to guess to know that it was Xiao Su, who would come over to deliver things every 2 days. At first, she thought that Qin Shuk had contacted him, but after a few times, she guessed that the 4 elders of the Li family had asked Xiao Su to come over to visit. Feng Ling went to open the door. She thought that Xiao Su was bringing some food over, but this time, Xiao Su was carrying 2 boxes. "Hi, good morning." Xiao Su smiled when he saw Feng Ling open the door. Feng Ling's expression was expressionless. She glanced at him. "What did you send today?" Xiao Su didn't waste any time and raised the box. These. In the future, stew some for Boss Li every day. Put it in various soups and dishes, or boil it in clear water. It's fine." Feng Ling took the box and only saw the words "Big Supplement" written on it. She nodded. "All right, I understand. Then I won't disturb you anymore. I'll come back in 2 days. Remember to give it to Boss." "Definitely." Okay. As for you, if you want to eat it, you can eat it, but you'd better eat less. Seeing Feng Ling's confused expression, Xiao Su didn't say anything else. He chuckled and waved his hand before slipping away. Feng Ling watched Xiao Su's back in confusion as he walked to the elevator. She closed the door and walked in with the box in her hand. What did you send this time? Li Nanheng was no longer surprised by this. He sat on the sofa as usual, closing his eyes and waiting for Feng Ling to massage him. Feng Ling didn't speak. She took the 2 boxes to the coffee table in front of the sofa and placed them on the coffee table. These are 2 tonic gift boxes. Gift box. Li Nanheng was amused. The elders are all elders. Why did they send me gift boxes? As she spoke, Feng Ling had already opened the gift box and took out several exquisite boxes. Sea cucumber. Feng Ling said. Hearing this, Li Nanheng turned his face to her. Pig kidney. Feng Ling continued to read. Li Nanheng, sheep kidney. Deer penis, venison, cattle penis, turtle meat. Li Nanheng. Feng Ling opened the 2 boxes and looked at them with a puzzled expression. What are these things for? Are they for nourishing blood? The chicken, duck, and goose that were sent over a few days ago, as well as all kinds of medicinal soup. What are these? I've never seen them before. How do they boil them in water? Li Nanheng touched his forehead speechlessly. Did the elders of the Li family think that he was injured? Did they give him so many things to strengthen his vitality and nourish his kidneys because they were afraid that he would be impotent? Seeing that Li Nanheng didn't speak, Feng Ling looked up at him again. Do you know how to cook these? Li Nanheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He raised his hand in the air. Put it down. Put it down. I don't need these things. W. 4M. Chapter 1388. These are all tonics. They must be helpful to your body. Why don't you use them? Feng Ling felt strange. Li Nanheng put down his hand and raised his eyes. He couldn't see, but he could still accurately look at Feng Ling's face. Are you sure you want me to eat them? The Li family must have asked Xiao Su to send them. Good things must be eaten. Feng Ling put the things back into the box and answered. Li Nanheng sighed with a smile. All right, then be mentally prepared. Prepare for what? Li Nanheng couldn't hold back his laughter. He leaned back on the sofa. Put them away first. I have a headache. Help me massage them again. Only then did Feng Ling shift her attention away from the 2 gift boxes. After putting the things back into the box, she returned to the sofa, raised her hand, and continued to massage his head. Does it still hurt? Li Nanheng didn't answer, but the corners of his mouth curved slightly, as if something funny had just happened. Feng Ling looked down at him and didn't ask more. After massaging him for a while, she applied medicine to his eyes. When she was applying the medicine, she saw that there was a faint smile on his lips. She was very puzzled. Li Nanheng, are you in a good mood today? I've always been in a good mood. Why? Feng Ling put away the gift box. Anyway, these could be stored temporarily. It was much easier to store than the chickens, ducks, and geese that Xiao Su sent over every day. She was indeed not in a hurry. She counted the days. Half a month ago, you said you wanted to eat fish, but in the past half a month, Xiao Su sent over too many things to eat. I haven't had the chance to make fish for you. Do you want to eat it today? Yes. Then I'll drive to the supermarket to buy fish. Don't go anywhere by yourself at home. Or do you want to go back to the bedroom and lie down to rest? Do you think I'm a child? Are you so worried about me staying at home alone? I'm afraid that you'll hurt yourself when you walk back and forth. If I'm not at home, I won't be able to come back to help you in time. Li Nanheng sighed with a smile. I should be much better than when I first came back. It won't be a big deal even if I walk for half an hour. Shall I accompany you to the supermarket? Feng Ling glanced at him and then at the furnishings in the room. Although there was nothing that could trip him, she had probably really taken care of this man for a long time. That feeling of worry had been lingering around her. She always felt that if she left, Li Nanheng would fall into the toilet when he went to the toilet. In the parking lot under the apartment building, Li Nanheng, who was personally helped by Feng Ling to change his clothes, stood by the car door and successfully sat in the back seat of the car. Why didn't you let me sit in the passenger seat? Li Nanheng asked. It's safer to sit in the back. Feng Ling closed the car door for him, walked to the front, and sat in the driver's seat. Sitting in the spacious car that should have belonged to him, Li Nanheng smiled. Isn't sitting here equivalent to treating you as a driver? It doesn't matter as long as it's safe. Feng Ling didn't explain much and drove the car out of the parking lot. This was the first time Feng Ling took Li Nanheng out alone after he was discharged from the hospital. A few days ago, she would at most help him walk on the balcony, sit, and bask in the sun, but this was the first time she went downstairs. Feng Ling's original intention was that Li Nanheng's body couldn't withstand any violent impact. Even if he could, she didn't dare to let him suffer anymore. Even though she was very confident in her driving skills, she was afraid that something would happen, so she didn't dare to take the risk of letting him sit in the passenger seat. Li Nanheng understood what she meant and didn't say much. However, he had to admit that although Feng Ling's personality was always straightforward, she had a lot of feminine side in her nature. She was very delicate, but she was not good at showing it, and this delicate side could only be understood in daily life and from knowing her too well. Especially the warmth hidden in her words, it was real. The supermarket was not too far from here. It was less than 10 minutes drive, and it was easy to find a parking space. When the car stopped, Li Nanheng fumbled around the car door, picked up the pair of sunglasses from the glove box, and put them on. The main thing was that there were 2 pieces of gauze on his eyes. It looked very ordinary at home, but if he walked out like this, others would really think that he had poked his eyes. If he wore sunglasses, at least passers-by wouldn't be able to see anything. At most, they would think that he was blind. Feng Ling helped him out of the car. It was almost noon, and the sun was just right. Li Nanheng couldn't see anything in the sunglasses, but he instinctively narrowed his eyes under the sun. Feng Ling noticed his subtle movements and couldn't help asking, "Can you see the light?" "If there was no gauze on my eyes, I might be able to see it. Now that there is gauze, how can I see it? I just instinctively feel the sun." Li Nanheng chuckled softly. Feng Ling was speechless. She helped him to the escalator outside the supermarket. In the elevator, Li Nanheng put one hand in his trouser pocket and the other hand was held by Feng Ling. It was as though the scene of him being held by Feng Ling the most in the past was perfect. Feng Ling supported him with one hand and held the map of the supermarket's internal shopping area that she had picked up from the elevator with the other hand. She was looking for the place to sell fish. "What color am I wearing today?" Li Nanheng asked leisurely. Feng Ling helped him out of the elevator and into the supermarket's main entrance. As they walked, she answered, "Black sportswear. I bought it for you online 2 days ago. It's the first time you've worn it. It fits you well. What about you? What color are you wearing?" "Me?" Feng Ling took the time to look down at her clothes. "White sportswear. It's similar to the one you're wearing. It's very loose and comfortable." Li Nanheng's lips curved up again. "Couple style. Feng Ling was silent for a moment. Sort of. What do you mean sort of? I bought it at the same time. It must have been bought in the same store. It's the same sportswear, and it's a black and white match. If it's not a couple style, what is it? I couldn't tell. It turns out that you also know how to think when you're in love. I thought you didn't know anything. I just casually bought 2 clothes that are more comfortable to wear. I'm tired of wearing those formal suits in the past 2 years. Don't explain. I understand your feelings for me. Li Nanheng, who was wearing sunglasses, walked forward with a pleased expression. Feng Ling, don't be shy. I accept it. Just wear it like this in the future. Feng Ling. She wanted to talk about young Master Mo, have you kissed me enough, with more like-minded people. W. 4M. Chapter 1389. In the supermarket, Li Nanheng strode forward as though he could see the road. There was clearly someone pushing a shopping cart in front of him, but he almost bumped into it. Feng Ling, who was worried, followed behind. She tugged at his hand and helped him adjust his direction. She quickly pulled over a shopping cart and pushed it in front. Li Nanheng was unconvinced. He also reached out and placed his hand on the shopping cart. I'll help you. Feng Ling chuckled in her heart. You'd better follow behind obediently. Don't get lost or bump into anything. It's better not to help. Although she felt this way in her heart, in order not to hurt Li Nanheng's slightly inflated heart, she endured it. After all, it was not suitable for her to shop for too long with a disabled person. Feng Ling wanted to quickly buy the fish and various ingredients she needed. She walked forward directly, and her speed was a little fast. Li Nanheng's height and legs could keep up. Earlier, he had been sitting in a car and did not walk much. His stamina was still good. When they were about to reach the fresh food area, Li Nanheng said, "We're almost there." Knowing that his nose and ears were especially sensitive, Feng Ling did not answer. She pushed the cart over and brought Li Nanheng along. She chose 2 fish. She was tired of killing the chickens, ducks, and geese she had recently killed, so she asked the staff in the supermarket to help her clean the fish. While waiting for the fish, she pushed the cart to buy some ingredients. And she also bought some snacks for Li Nanheng, some peanuts, longan, red dates, and so on. Of course, what Li Nanheng could not see was that these things were sold at the counter for women's menstrual supplements. Otherwise, he would have chosen to buy them elsewhere with a livid face. After walking half a circle in the supermarket, Li Nanheng's face was not red or out of breath. It seemed that his recuperation these past few days was indeed very effective. Perhaps the supplements he had eaten were also good. From this, Feng Ling considered the tonics in the 2 gift boxes at home. She thought that in a few days, she should find time to put those into the soup to nourish him. The things the Li family asked Xiao Su to send were definitely not bad. They were all very nutritious. He was about to go to another area. When he passed by the liquor area, he suddenly turned his head and sniffed. Is there a liquor cellar here? Coincidentally, there were a few tall wine barrels by the side. There were also people selling wine there. Feng Ling glanced at them and said without hesitation, "Don't think about it. You can't drink it now." Li Nanheng, who had been forced to quit smoking and drinking for a long time because of his injuries, was quite pained. "It smells like red wine. Isn't it good for the body to drink less red wine? I definitely won't let you drink it. Just give up." Li Nanheng, forget it. He couldn't see right now. When he left, he didn't even bring his wallet or phone. If Feng Ling left him here in a fit of anger, he would probably go begging on the streets. In front of Chief Feng, who was in charge of food, clothing, and finances, he didn't want to drink anymore. However, before she walked out of the liquor area, a person who brushed past her suddenly stopped. Feng Ling. Hearing that voice, Feng Ling only found it familiar at first, but before she could figure out who it was, Li Nanheng's face darkened and he put on a cold expression. Feng Ling turned to see Qiao Fei, who she hadn't seen for many years. Beside Qiao Fei was a young lady dressed in beautiful clothes. It seemed like they were chatting and laughing as they pushed the shopping cart over. It should be, girlfriend. Feng Ling immediately smiled politely at Qiao Fei. Long time no see. Qiao Fei was also very surprised to see her in Los Angeles. In the past few years, he hadn't asked about her, but he had heard that she had returned to the Feng family and went to the Feng Corporation. She no longer had anything to do with the base. Looking at Feng Ling, whose long hair was tied behind her head and who was used to wearing sportswear, Qiao Fei's eyes lit up. However, it was clear that he was no longer as infatuated and thirsty for her as he used to be. He only smiled and said, "Yes, it's indeed been a long time. Why did you suddenly return to Los Angeles? Shouldn't you be in New York?" Before he could finish speaking, Qiao Fei's gaze landed on the cold-faced fiend standing next to Feng Ling. He was startled. "Boss Li." Before Feng Ling could explain, Qiao Fei raised his brows again. "You're still wearing such thick sunglasses in the super room. Boss's lifestyle and taste in recent years have changed a lot." Feng Ling chuckled. "No, his eyes are, and I'm happy." Li Nanheng pushed the car beside her, indicating for her not to speak carelessly. At the same time, his voice was cold and emotionless. Feng Ling, the young lady beside Qiao Fei, asked him something in a low voice. Qiao Fei smiled and said something to her warmly. He then turned to look at Feng Ling. "I'm going to visit my girlfriend's parents tonight. I still need to buy some gifts. I don't have much time, so I won't disturb you. Shall we have a drink another day?" "All right." Feng Ling nodded at him. "Another day." Hearing the words "another day," Li Nanheng's expression turned even colder. Qiao Fei politely said something to Feng Ling and then walked away with his girlfriend. Feng Ling was about to continue pushing the shopping cart forward. However, before she could push it, she saw that Li Nanheng's expression was filled with the words, "I'm not happy." "What date? Have you forgotten the rule that people from the base can't meet frequently after they leave?" Li Nanheng's voice was cold. Feng Ling rolled her eyes at him. "How many years has it been? Is it worth being jealous over this? Didn't you see Qiao Fei with his girlfriend?" "I didn't see it," Li Nanheng said honestly. Feng Ling. She was so angry, but she couldn't vent her anger. "Then you should have heard it. He said he was going to see his girlfriend's parents. Just now, his girlfriend held his arm and walked with him. They were so affectionate. It's clear that he has already let go of me. Why are you still jealous? If he has let go of you, why are you still asking him out?" "I was just being polite. He asked the woman he once liked to drink with him in front of his girlfriend. His purpose is not pure, and you still agreed." Feng Ling clenched her fists and gritted her teeth to say, "Then according to what you said, after leaving the base, we can't meet frequently in private. What are the two of us now? Should I send you back to the Li family right now and never talk to you again?" Li Nanheng choked for a moment and didn't speak until he felt that Feng Ling couldn't be bothered with him and directly pushed the shopping cart forward. He quickly chased after her and grabbed her arm. "This is not the same. I'm leaving the base with you. There is no distinction between the two of us. We are one. It's different from the surname Qiao, surname Dou, and surname Mao. Go away." Feng Ling didn't want to pay attention to this 10,000-year-old vinegar jar. "I can't go away. I can't see. I'll fall. My internal injuries haven't healed yet. Li Nanheng held her hand and didn't let go. At the same time, he raised his hand to cover his chest. Feng Ling also held her chest, feeling that she was about to suffer internal injuries. On the last day of the month, there is a double monthly ticket activity. Asking for monthly tickets, I want to chat with more like-minded people about Young Master Mo. Have you kissed enough? Chat about life, and find a confidant W. 4M. Chapter 1390. Fortunately, Qiao Fei really came with his girlfriend. The two of them had already gone to pay the bill lovingly. Otherwise, who knew how long Li Nanheng's face would be? Feng Ling ignored him and Li Nanheng walked behind him. In any case, she couldn't really leave him here in his current state. Li Nanheng placed one hand on the shopping cart and the other in his trouser pocket as he followed her. The fish was ready. Feng Ling went over to take it. When she turned back, she saw that Li Nanheng obediently placed his hand on the shopping cart and did not take a step away. Her heart softened. Anyway, he couldn't see her, so she sighed helplessly and smiled. In the past, when Qiao Fei was at the base, he was jealous. Now, he was also jealous. Did he really care about her to this extent? What was so good about her? Feng Ling gently placed the bag containing the fish into the shopping cart and walked over to stand in front of Li Nanheng. However, she maintained a distance of about a meter between them and just looked at him. The man was at least a head taller than her. She raised her face slightly and looked at him without making a sound. When she walked over, there was no sound under her feet. There were people coming and going here, so he might not be able to hear anything. Li Nanheng stood there. As expected, after waiting for a while, he did not hear her return. His expression did not change. At first, he waited leisurely and relaxed. Gradually, he stood straighter and then looked in the direction of the seafood area for a while, as though he was not sure if she had gone to buy something else or was delayed by something. However, he could not see, and he could not walk around. After all, he could not see. If he really walked away, no one could predict what would happen. Especially if Feng Ling came back later and found that he had disappeared, she would definitely be angry. Li Nanheng stood there without moving. However, his left hand was casually placed on the armrest of the shopping cart and the other hand was in his trouser pocket. At this moment, he raised his right hand and placed both hands on the shopping cart. With just a very slight movement, he changed from indifferent and leisurely to obediently holding the shopping cart and waiting for her to come back to find him. Feng Ling found it somewhat funny. She suddenly raised her hand to help him adjust his sunglasses, but the man habitually raised his hand and quickly held her wrist. She could not see his eyes, but she could instantly feel the coldness on his face. However, in the next moment, when he realized that the person in front of him was Feng Ling, the coldness on the man's face instantly disappeared. At the same time, he slowly moved his hand up and held her hand. "Why did you take so long to come back?" Feng Ling smiled, but her laughter did not come from her mouth. Instead, she spoke calmly as though nothing had happened. "I bought some other things earlier and was delayed for a few minutes." Li Nanheng's expression had relaxed, but he did not let go of her hand. "Are you going back now?" Feng Ling did not shake him off. She only curved her lips into a smile and pushed the shopping cart with him to the checkout area. As they walked, she said, "Did you think someone wanted to touch you? You stood in front of me without moving. Suddenly, I felt someone's hand approaching. It was only 0.1 seconds. A normal person would be on guard," Li Nanheng said calmly. However, since he said this, it meant that he had already understood that she must have deliberately not made a sound in front of him. She said that she went to buy something else at the last minute, but it was just an excuse to fool him. He did not argue with her. There were too many people at the checkout counter. Feng Ling simply went to the self-service cash register with Li Nanheng to pay and then left with the 2 shopping bags. After going downstairs, she placed the things she bought into the car. Feng Ling looked at the sky and narrowed her eyes at the direction of the sun. The weather was very good. Do you want to go home directly or find a place with good air to take a walk? I think you should be able to hold on today's physical strength. Feng Ling also evaluated him based on the strength he suddenly held her wrist. It could be seen that although Li Nanheng's body needed to rest and his physical strength was indeed much weaker than before, in an emergency, his strength would not be weak. Up to you. Li Nanheng stood by the car and listened to the sound of her putting the things into the trunk. He also looked in the direction of the warm sunlight and turned his face. As if feeling that the weather was really good, he said, "Is there an amusement park on the way back?" After all, Li Nanheng used to go to that apartment often, and he did know the various buildings and facilities nearby better than her. It seems so. I didn't pay much attention. Let's go to the amusement park for a walk. Feng Ling couldn't figure it out. The 2 of them were adults. Why didn't they find a park suitable for walking and basking in the sun? Why did they go to the amusement park? However, it seemed that the amusement park happened to be on the way back. They didn't even need to change the direction of the car. It was just on the way back. It was very convenient, so she didn't object. All right, then let's go for a walk. Li Nanheng smiled. Feng Ling glanced at him again and found that after this man was injured, perhaps because he couldn't see, his smile was no longer so annoying. He would always smile a little softer and more restrained because there were too many invisible uncertainties in front of him. He was clearly still the same person, but he seemed to have become a little more cautious in some unnoticeable habits. This caution came from his eyes. He had never said that he minded whether he could see or not, but no one would feel comfortable in the darkness every day, not knowing whether it was day or night. Feng Ling closed the trunk, reached out to take his arm, helped him to the car door, and opened the door. Let's go, get in the car. Let's go to the amusement park. Li Nanheng seemed to be a little reluctant to part with the warm sunlight outside the car. After entering the car, Feng Ling helped him open the back window. Anyway, it was not cold, but the weather was not hot enough to turn on the air conditioner in the car. After driving all the way to the amusement park, Feng Ling found a place closest to the main entrance and parked the car. When she got out, she happened to see a passage extending from the outside to the inside of the amusement park. On both sides were all kinds of children's toys, food, and drinks. There were many children blowing bubbles around. You sent Momo to the Feng family. Li Nanheng heard the laughter of the children around him and asked softly as Feng Ling held his arm and walked. I sent him to my grandparents' side. This way, they will have someone to accompany them. I can rest assured. Chapter 1391. At this point, Feng Ling said, I saw Dr. Wen last time. Li Nanheng did not say anything. As he walked, he felt the warmth of the sun, as though waiting for her to continue. He doesn't know about little Momo's existence, does he? Li Nanheng did not speak at first. After a moment, he said, I only know the gist of it. Wen Liqing isn't someone who will complain to others about everything. I don't have much contact with her in private. I only heard some gossip from some relatives of the Li family who have dealings with the Wen family. So you don't know why she chose to take such a step? You don't know why she hid the existence of the child? I only know that she hid it, but I really don't know the reason. She didn't tell anyone about her relationship with Wen Linhan. How could I know so much inside information? As Li Nanheng spoke, he emphasized, I don't even know what the woman I like thinks every day. How can I have the time to care about other women? Feng Ling was not angry. I don't know why you said you wanted to come to the amusement park. I didn't ask, did I? Because you like it. Feng Ling. She stopped in her tracks and turned to look at him in surprise. When did I say I liked this kind of place? Li Nanheng curved his lips meaningfully. At this moment, the children playing by the side were too noisy. He turned his head and whispered a few words in her ear. Feng Ling was stunned at first, then stunned, and then surprised. In the end, her eyes widened in disbelief. She had never been so idiotic. Li Nanheng only smiled. All right, I know there's still a little girl living in your heart, but you've locked her up. I can't see her now. Even if you're so happy that your nose is bubbling, I won't laugh at you. Feng Ling, she walked into the amusement park with Li Nanheng in disbelief. She looked at the many entertainment facilities. This amusement park was very big, and all the facilities were several times larger than those in Mr. Mike's resort. Furthermore, there were many people queuing up for every item. Feng Ling found it unbelievable. After drinking too much, she dragged Li Nanheng to the children's playground and forced him to play with her on the slide and seesaw. However, those were indeed purely children's projects. There were many exciting projects in this amusement park. She looked at the roller coaster and thought for a moment before turning to look at Li Nanheng. Roller coaster or merry-go-round? Li Nanheng asked her, where do you want to sit? The merry-go-round. That's safer. Your body can't handle too much stimulation and turbulence, especially in your eyes. It's better for this kind of stable event. Before she could finish, the man grabbed her hand and pulled her in another direction. Roller coaster. Feng Ling, then why did he ask her? She didn't know if Li Nanheng wanted to play or if she wanted to play, but Feng Ling couldn't be bothered to argue with him. She only observed for a while and confirmed that although the roller coaster was fast, it started and stopped smoothly. When it was too fast in the middle, she could only feel the wind. There was no danger or impact on him, so she went to buy the tickets. When they sat on it, a staff member came over to buckle the safety handle for them. Feng Ling turned to look at Li Nanheng. When you can't see, your fear should increase by dozens of times. Hold it in and don't scream. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll laugh at you for the rest of your life. Li Nanheng snorted. I didn't even feel anything when the helicopter dropped a rope ladder at a high altitude. It's just a roller coaster. Before he could finish speaking, it began. Feng Ling was expressionless and indifferent to this speed. Like him, she had received high-altitude rope ladder training and had undergone all kinds of high-altitude speeding training. Indeed, she did not feel anything. Her heartbeat did not change. After a few laps, the young men, women, and children who were screaming the entire time turned pale. Some were happy and excited, while others were frightened. Only Li Nanheng and Feng Ling, who were sitting in the front two seats, did not change their expressions. After the two of them untied the safety handle and went down, Li Nanheng looked regretful. It's not exciting enough. The staff member who was waiting to hear the praise instantly pulled a long face. Feng Ling was speechless and hurriedly pulled Li Nanheng, who couldn't see his face, away. That's why I said this kind of thing is boring. How could I possibly pull you to play on the slide? Li Nanheng, your ability to make up lies is so childish. What you said will definitely not happen. Feng Ling was very sure. Li Nanheng chuckled coldly and did not argue with her. He stopped and looked in another direction. What's going on over there? Why are there so many screams? An island ship. Oh, that's boring. Go home or... Is there any dessert shop or ice cream shop? Li Nanheng asked. Feng Ling was puzzled. What was wrong with this man today? She looked around. There's an ice cream shop, but there are a lot of people lining up. Do you want to eat? You want to eat. Feng Ling. Why is it me again? Li Nanheng was not sturdy. He moved his chin forward and gestured for her to help him buy ice cream. Feng Ling had no choice. Since the injured big boss had already made a request, she could only satisfy him. She could only pull him over and obediently line up at the back of the crowd. She did not jump in line with the children in front of her. After queuing for about 20 minutes, it was finally their turn. They bought a mango-flavored ice cream and a blueberry-flavored ice cream. Feng Ling had been fond of blueberry-flavored desserts for so many years, so she really ate this one. She ate as she walked. Seeing that Li Nanheng did not eat much, she chose an empty bench to sit down on. At this moment, Feng Ling felt that this scene was like a young couple in love. It was more like an old couple sitting here eating ice cream while watching the various children playing nearby. The sun was warm, the ice cream was sweet, and the people around her gave her enough security. It seemed that in her life since she was young, whether it was in the base or the Feng family, she had never felt this kind of peace and tranquility. Perhaps she had, but it was in the jungle that had been burned down a few years ago. As she dug into the ice cream in the cup, she said, "There's news about Kay's customized prosthesis. He'll be able to stand up in a few days. I reckon he'll be able to jump over to visit you." What? Are you worried about my eyes again? Li Nanheng chuckled disapprovingly. Feng Ling glanced at him. I'm just thinking, when will the blood clot pressing on your optic nerve disappear? Li Nanheng raised his hand. He did not need to fumble in the air and accurately held her shoulder. There's no rush. He has a prosthesis. Don't I still have you as my eyes? Chapter 1392. Before Feng Ling could speak, Li Nanheng slowly raised his hand from her shoulder and stroked her eyes. And these eyes are big and bright. They're much better than Kay's fake eyes made of equipment. Feng Ling raised her hand and was about to pull his hand down, but the man did not let go. Instead, he caressed her eyes and nodded in satisfaction. The bones around the eye sockets are also so good. Even when you grow old, you'll still be a beauty. After being teased for some reason, Feng Ling found that every time she wanted to say something seriously, she couldn't do anything to him. On the way back, Feng Ling brought Li Nanheng into the barbershop and asked someone to tidy up his hair. In the end, the trimmed length was the same as before. It was not a particularly short buzz cut, but it was not as long as a few days ago. In short, it was very energetic and good-looking. When he walked out of the barbershop wearing sunglasses, he looked no different from usual. His complexion had long recovered, except that he was slightly thinner than before. A few days ago, Feng Ling had said that Kay would probably come to visit in a few days. In the end, she was right. The day after Kay put on the prosthetic leg, he spent a day getting used to it. Then, he happily left the wheelchair in a handsome suit and came with the brothers of the sniper team. At that time, Li Nanheng was sleeping in the bedroom. After taking the medicine at noon, he had to sleep for 2 hours because of the medicine. He was already used to it. At 2:00 in the afternoon, he was woken up by the laughter outside the living room. He casually tugged at his somewhat fluffy and messy hair and walked out of the bedroom while feeling the air. Originally, Tam, Lin Cheng, and the others were sitting in the living room, chatting and laughing. When they suddenly turned around and saw Boss Lee, especially since Boss Lee's eyes were not bandaged, they didn't know if he could see them with his eyes open. They instinctively kept quiet. The atmosphere immediately became tense, and they didn't dare to make any noise. Feng Ling was packing up the various fruits and gifts that Tam and the others had sent over. When she heard that the living room had suddenly become silent, she poked half her head out of the kitchen to take a look. She saw that the four of them had changed from angry lions to obedient puppies because Boss Lee had woken up. They all quickly raised their hands to their mouths and gestured for them to be quiet. Fong Ling sighed and smiled. Although Li Nanheng had left the base in name, he was still the boss in the eyes of these brothers. They immediately became obedient when they saw him. "What are you all doing? Why are you shouting?" Li Nanheng walked out with an expression as if he had just been woken up from his sleep. When Boss walked in the direction of the sofa, his steps were steady and straight. He didn't even need to raise his hand to feel around. It didn't seem like he couldn't see anything at all. Tam, Lin Cheng, Kay, and the others just sat there and watched in a daze. Could it be that Boss's eyes were beautiful? However, when Li Nanheng walked to the sofa, he found that Lin Cheng was sitting on the coffee table and his leg was blocking his way. Li Nanheng kicked him. "Move your leg away." Lin Cheng hurriedly retracted his legs in fright. Then he saw Li Nanheng slowly sit down on the sofa. He didn't look at any of them. Instead, he casually touched the sofa and touched a light blue pillow that looked like a girl's heart. He then sat there. Looking at Boss, who was no longer as thin as before, holding such a thing in his arms, the four of them exchanged glances. They were sure that Boss's eyes hadn't recovered yet. He probably didn't even know what this pillow looked like or what color it was. "Well, Boss, we brought Kay over to see you." Tam stood up from the sofa and patted Lei Peng and Lin Cheng, who were in the way. The three of them sat on the coffee table, leaving only Kay and Boss to sit on the sofa. Kay also remembered that Tam had given him a look, indicating for him to sit a little closer to the side and not touch Boss. After all, he was also an injured patient. Even if Boss wanted to find fault with someone, he definitely wouldn't do anything to him. Although that was what he said, sitting on the same sofa as Boss really made him feel more pressured. Especially since his life was saved by Boss. First, Boss saved his life, and then Fong Ling went to pick up their lives. "Boss, you and Fong Ling arranged for Kay's prosthetic leg, right? It's too realistic, okay? After putting it on, it doesn't look any different from before, and it's especially sturdy and flexible. Yesterday, he almost went to the training ground to wrestle with us," Lin Cheng said as he reached out and patted Kay's knee. F***CK, be gentle." Kay hurriedly dodged his leg to the side in pain. "Didn't you say it doesn't hurt?" Lin Cheng was surprised. "Nonsense, I definitely won't hurt if you patted my prosthetic leg. Just now, you directly patted the flesh of my knee. I'll use this strength to pat you a few times. Try to see if it hurts. Do you think I'm made of iron?" Kay said as he moved his leg to a safe position. "Noisy." Li Nanheng raised his hand and rubbed between his eyebrows. His indifferent words successfully silenced the four people in front of him and made them as quiet as chickens. Kay thought for a moment and moved closer to Li Nanheng. "Boss, I've been lying in bed since we were injured in Israel. I haven't had the chance to formally thank you. After all, I can stand up now. I just wanted to come over and say hello to you. There's no need to say anything. Just be quiet and don't bother me." "Tisk, boss, can't you see that I can stand up now?" "But boss, in order to save me, you really paid a big price. Even now, your eyes haven't recovered. Boss, in the future, my eyes will be your eyes. When you need me, I'll come. Or if medicine is developed to a certain extent, I'll dig out my eyes for you." Perhaps because Kay's words were too bloody, the living room fell silent. Li Nanheng frowned, his expression somewhat disdainful. "Really, boss, my eyesight is very good. If I dig it out for you, I think you can, don't." Li Nanheng raised his hand in resistance and pushed Kay's head away. With your shifty-eyed appearance, you still want to put your eyes on my face. Do you know what it means to ruin a face with a pair of eyes? My perfect face can't be ruined by those eyes of yours. Today's candy has been delivered. Happy Labor Day holiday. The first day of May seems to be during the double monthly votes campaign. Begging for monthly votes, one vote becomes 2 votes, don't miss it. Dads. Begging for monthly votes to extend my life. Chapter 1393. Oh, my God, what's this? Feng Ling was used to cooking by herself every day in the past month, so she simply cooked a few more dishes. After bringing them to the table one by one, Lei Ping jumped up in surprise and dragged Tam and Lin Qing over. Our little Feng Ling is going to show off her cooking skills. Sure enough, women are different. If you really study cooking carefully, you will soon learn it. Tam reached out and quietly grabbed a piece of meat and stuffed it into his mouth. He was amazed by the delicious taste and hurriedly picked up a tissue to wipe his hands, lest Feng Ling glared at him when she came out and found him eating with his hands. In the end, when Feng Ling came out, she saw that Li Nanheng was still sitting on the sofa, disdaining Kay's various organs, from his eyes to his neck to his mouth, and finally, even his fingernails. Facing the boss he had always admired, now his savior, Kay was still very touched. On the dining table, the dishes that were originally filled with dishes were now inexplicably missing something. Either a few prawns were missing from one dish, or a few pieces of meat were missing from another dish. However, it seemed that the cutlery had not been touched. The others were also standing by the table with serious expressions. Feng Ling's expression was a little strange. She looked at them carefully. Tam waved at her with a smile. When will the meal be ready? Soon, right away. After speaking, Feng Ling turned to bring out the last medicinal soup she had just learned. When she walked to the dining table, she saw that there seemed to be 2 less prawns on the table. She turned to look at the culprit, Tam, and saw that he secretly clenched a tissue in his hand that he hadn't thrown away yet. She was angry and amused. If you are hungry, sit down and eat. Why are you standing there? I'm waiting for you to serve all the dishes. Although I have eaten your food before, it's rare for it to be so sumptuous. Seeing that he couldn't hide it anymore, Tam chuckled and quickly sat down. Lin Cheng and Lei Peng looked back at the direction of the sofa and then gave Tam a look, indicating that boss hadn't come to sit down yet. Tam paused and turned his eyes. Kay, help boss come to eat. Hearing this, Kay hurriedly stood up and quickly helped Li Nanheng, who was still stuffed with a pillow in his arms. Li Nanheng raised his eyebrows. Your legs are really flexible. Hee hee. Kay smiled. Boss, let me help you over. In fact, Li Nanheng could get up and find the table by himself, but Kay's attitude was too enthusiastic. Li Nanheng didn't say anything more and let Kay help him walk. Then these lackeys acted as though they had seen the emperor arrive. Some helped him up, some pulled the chair, and some prepared the tableware. Only when Li Nanheng sat down properly did they heave a sigh of relief. In this world, except for Li Nanheng, no one knew Feng Ling's cooking better than him. Smelling the fragrance of the various dishes on the table, Li Nanheng was not in a hurry to eat. Instead, he raised his eyebrows proudly as if praising himself for his wife. How is it? It tastes good. Not bad, really not bad. It's simply delicious. Tam had already picked up the tableware and started to eat the various dishes on the table. With a shrimp in his mouth, he said, I remember that the food cooked by Feng Ling was edible before, but now it's really delicious. Kay also sat down. It seems that I have tasted Fong Ling's cooking more times than you. Tam immediately gave Kay a, "Do you want to die?" look. Kay paused and then turned to see Boss Lee's unfocused eyes. He immediately paused and hurriedly said to save himself, "Cough, in fact, I haven't tasted it many times. Among so many of us, only Boss has tasted it the most times." Ha ha ha. Li Nanheng coldly glanced at him, and Kay hurriedly lowered his head to pick up the tableware to eat. After taking a few bites, Lin Qing said, "In fact, Fong Ling used very little oil, salt, and seasoning. This is all because Boss is not suitable for food with too much oil and salt, right? You can still make it so delicious in this case." It can be seen that Fong Ling really worked hard to satisfy Boss's desire for good food and nourish his body at the same time. "I saw a few pieces of paper stuck on the range hood in the kitchen just now. I took a look at them. They seem to be recipes and seasoning methods. Yes, I also saw that the iPad is lit up. It seems to be a recipe. Fong Ling is so hardworking now. Boss, you will really be blessed in the future." Li Nanheng was very satisfied with being flattered. He sat at the dining table and picked up the tableware. In fact, his movements were very smooth. However, because he had gradually gotten used to life, no matter what he did, it seemed that his eyes would not affect him. Seeing that their boss was in such a good state, the four lackeys naturally did not dare to mention his eyes again. They said whatever they were happy about. They even mentioned that when their boss had an accident in Israel, because the people sent by the base really could not find their boss, on the day they announced that there was no need to go to Israel again, Fong sat alone in front of the small silver plates of the deceased brothers in front of the base hall and cried for an entire night. When everyone found him the next morning, he was still lying on the ground with a few bottles of wine that he had gotten from Han Jin beside him. He reeked of alcohol, and when he was helped back, he kept saying, "Boss, when are you coming back? Boss, come back to see me, boss, give me a dream," completely destroying his usual calm image. Li Nanheng listened expressionlessly. The base doesn't have unlimited resources, especially the elite search and rescue team. If there's an official mission, we still have to go out. We can't keep mobilizing all the firepower in the base just because Kay and I are dead or alive. It's not easy for him to persist for so long, but for the sake of the overall situation of the base, it's understandable that he stopped sending people to search and rescue. If I were him, I would make the same decision. Speaking up to here, Li Nanheng said lightly, "Didn't you guys return to the base because you made up for your crimes?" "Yes." Tam immediately raised his eyes. "Boss, you know." Li Nanheng was calm and composed. "No matter what, it was you guys and Fong Ling who went to find me and Kay. If you don't give you a chance to make up for your crimes, Fong, the current person in charge of the base, can scram." "Hee, I knew that, boss. You look cold and kind. You're loyal to us." Chapter 1394. Lin Qing knocked on Tam's head and said softly, "That's because we brought Fong Ling with us. Our boss's steel is all around Fong Ling. Why would he talk about brotherhood with you? Who the hell are you? Don't say that. Our boss treats us brothers quite well," Lei Ping quickly said. Li Nanheng picked up a glass of water on the table and took a sip. He said calmly, "Lin Qing is right. The one you should thank is Fong Ling, the four lackeys. He just wanted to come over and flatter boss. How could he taste the taste of public display of affection? Did Boss Li's feelings for Fong Ling overflow? Did he love her to the point of insanity? He didn't even want their brotherhood and only wanted Fong Ling. Fong Ling had already walked over and sat down beside Li Nanheng. She asked casually, "What are you thanking me for?" Thank the heavens, thank the earth, and thank Feng Ling for letting Boss find his desire to live. Lei Ping said vaguely as he picked at the dishes in his bowl. Feng Ling glanced at him strangely and then saw that the others were choked by the dog food. She simply ignored them and habitually scooped a bowl of medicinal soup and placed it in front of Li Nanheng. Drink more of this soup. It's good for nourishing your energy and blood. By the way, I haven't made the things in the 2 gift boxes that Xiao Su sent last time. Coincidentally, there are many people here today. Why don't you all stay tonight and I'll make those things for you to eat? The 4 lackeys still didn't know what the so-called gift boxes were. Before they could reply, Li Nanheng had just picked up the bowl and was about to drink the soup. He paused and almost spat it out. He forced himself to swallow the medicinal soup in his mouth. There's no need. I don't think they'll stay that late, Li Nanheng said coldly. Although these 4 lackeys had nothing to do in the afternoon and wanted to stay here for a while longer, when they heard Boss Li's cold hint, none of them dared to answer Feng Ling but said, yes, 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 don't bother. We have to go back to the base in a while. We don't have to bring our share for dinner. That's right, that's right. Don't bother. We have to return to the base in a while. We don't have to bring our share for dinner. That's right, we'll be leaving soon. Seeing that they spoke in unison, Feng Ling did not say much. She said, I think Boss doesn't like the things in that gift box. There were several times when I wanted to make it, but he refused. Why don't I bring it back for you? Wait, I'll go get it for you. What is it? Kay asked curiously. Feng Ling was about to stand up when her hands suddenly sank. Li Nanheng raised his hand and accurately held her hand. He then firmly pressed her back to the chair by the dining table. Sit down. You don't have to give it to them. I'll eat. Feng Ling glanced at him. Last time, you said that, you didn't want to eat it. There aren't many tonics that taste good. When have you seen me take the initiative to take medicine? They can't stand things that are too nutritious. Li Nanheng's voice was strangely cold and hard. He forcefully held Feng Ling and prevented her from showing them those things. Seeing that he insisted, Feng Ling did not stand up again. She looked at the 4 lackeys and felt that it was not good to let them go back empty-handed. However, since Boss had already spoken, the 4 of them definitely did not dare to take anything away, so she could only give up. After the meal, the 4 lackeys who wanted to sit here for a while left very cooperatively. Before they left, they helped Feng Ling clean up the dining table and kitchen. They were all very clean and nimble. Then they left happily. The house finally returned to its usual silence. Feng Ling simply hugged the iPad and sat on the soft ground in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in the living room. She used the iPad to discuss matters with the heads of the various departments of the phone corporation in New York. Although she had the intention of handing the phone corporation to Qin Shuk, and the 2 elders of the Feng family were not particularly opposed to this, Qin Shuk did not want to take the lead. She only did all the urgent matters at hand, but she was used to handing over more matters that needed Feng Ling to decide to her. As a result, Feng Ling still had to communicate with the company when she was free. Every day, she would repeat the same thing endlessly, which was to persuade Qin Shuk to let her take over the Feng corporation. After all, Qin Shuk was a relative of the Feng family. She was very kind and filial to the 2 elders of the Feng family. She had grown up in front of them and was no different from a granddaughter. After failing to persuade her again, Feng Ling smiled helplessly and typed another line of words on the iPad. At this moment, Qin Shuk changed the topic. Is Li Nanheng by your side? Feng Ling paused and turned back to look at Li Nanheng, who had walked over from the sofa and was sitting cross-legged next to her. Earlier, she was busy talking to Qin Shuk. Although she felt that he had come, she did not pay much attention. Now, she realized that he was very close to her and was sitting on the same soft carpet as her. The sunlight outside the window landed on the two of them. She replied, "When are you two going to get married?" Feng Ling held her chin with one hand and looked at the line of words on the iPad screen. She then turned to look at Li Nanheng beside her. When the sunlight landed on his body and face, his eyes, which were not covered with gauze, subconsciously narrowed slightly. "Right now, you are very sensitive to light. The doctor said that if you can maintain the condition of being able to see light, it means that the blood clot that oppresses the optic nerve is not stubborn," Feng Ling said softly. Li Nanheng looked out of the window. "Really?" "Qin Shuk asked me when I will marry you," she said again. Li Nanheng's brows moved slightly, and he turned his face to her in surprise. "You can't wait." Feng Ling held her chin with one hand and gently tapped her face with her fingers. Her voice sounded very normal as she said, "Qin Shuk is asking me." "I'm just relaying her question." "Then what are your plans?" Li Nanheng leaned his body slightly toward her. His tall figure was by her side, and his slightly narrowed eyes were close to her head. When the sunlight landed on his eyes, she realized that this man's eyelashes were actually very long. They were warmly illuminated by the sunlight. Although he could not see, he instinctively blinked a few times. Chapter 1395. What plans can I have? Feng Ling tilted her head and looked at him. "After all, I lost, so I can only listen to your arrangements." Hearing her say the word lost, Li Nanheng snorted. "Back then, your cenotaph directly entered the Li family's ancestral hall. Even if you haven't officially married me for so many years, you have long been recognized by our Li family's ancestors. If you want to marry, can't you marry at any time?" These words made it seem as though she was destined to be locked with Li Nanheng for the rest of her life. After nearly a month, the weather in Los Angeles had already entered the hot summer. Feng Ling finally convinced Qin Shuk. She could finally officially take a vacation and no longer have to care about the phone corporation's matters. Every day, she could cook for Li Nanheng in her apartment and the apartment that originally belonged to Li Nanheng, massage him, and water the flowers and weeds on the balcony. Every day, Feng Ling said that she wanted to cut her hair back to its previous length. Li Nanheng had no objections. He only said, "It's just that he can't see it now." When he occasionally touches her, he can immediately feel her hair. If it's short, he probably won't be able to touch it in the future. Because of his words, Feng Ling gave up on the plan to cut her hair short. Every day, she simply tied her hair behind her head. Occasionally, Feng Ling would drive Li Nanheng to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor said that he had recovered well in all aspects, and his physical strength had recovered well. It was much better than expected, but the blood clot in his brain had yet to absorb itself. It was still pressing on his optic nerves, causing his vision to not recover for the time being. But at least everything was developing in the right direction. Li Nanheng was a man. All day long, Feng Ling would coax him gently and occasionally coldly order him to take medicine, eat, and sleep. He would eat and sleep all day. When he was bored, he would take a walk downstairs and the nearby park. The Li family often sent him this kind of tonic. Although Li Nanheng asked those tonics to be placed in the cabinet, Li Nanheng had already gained a lot of weight in the short 2 months he was by Feng Ling's side. When he first returned from Israel, he had lost 15 pounds. In the 2 months after he was discharged, he had gained 7 to 8 pounds. "Did you say that you'll accompany me to take a shower after I gain 8 kilograms?" Li Nanheng had just measured his weight and was about to take a shower when he suddenly stopped in front of the bathroom door and turned back to look at Feng Ling. Feng Ling was about to help him get a change of clothes when she heard his words. She paused and turned to see the man standing in front of the bathroom as though waiting for her figure. She murmured, "Haven't I been helping you wash every day? Let's shower together." Li Nanheng raised his eyebrows. Feng Ling, for 2 whole months, she took care of Li Nanheng's daily life dutifully every day, but the most intimate moment every day was when she helped him take a bath before he went to bed. This man would take the opportunity to kiss her face from time to time, but he didn't do anything. After all, she had been taking care of his health and didn't want to arouse his fire. She just wanted him to recover quickly and didn't have any other evil thoughts. She didn't have any evil thoughts, but it didn't mean that this man didn't have any. Several times, when he was taking a shower, he deliberately got water on her and then wanted to pull her clothes. No matter what, he wanted to kiss her in the bathroom or do something with her, but in the end, she escaped. Later, she said that as long as he continued to take care of his body, he would say it again when he gained at least 8 pounds. At that time, she said that if he gained at least 8 pounds, he would say it again. It was just a talk. It wasn't like she really wanted to take off her clothes and shower naked with him in the bathroom. Even if they really bathed together, Feng Ling wouldn't mind. However, he couldn't see right now, and his body still had to rest. The doctor said that his cardiovascular and cerebrovascular aspects were still very weak. After all, he had suffered such a serious injury back then. Right now, he couldn't suffer too much emotional fluctuations and some physical impulses. Every time Feng Ling felt that he might faint in the bathroom for more than 20 minutes, she was always very careful. However, Li Nanheng's physical fitness was really good. It always exceeded her imagination. In the past 2 months after returning to recuperate, not to mention the fact that he had never fainted once, even if he accidentally fell because he couldn't see, he could immediately stand up and continue walking without a change in expression. He didn't complain at all. So, for a person with a strong mental fortitude like him, how bad was his body in Israel for him to not acknowledge her? At that time, he might have felt that he would die at any moment. Feng Ling wanted to avoid the topic of bathing and only went to get a change of clothes for him. Hurry up and go take a shower. Don't talk so much nonsense. There are still a few bowls that haven't been washed. There's no need to use the dishwasher. I'll go wash them by hand. As she spoke, she entered her daily safe haven kitchen. The sound of the water in the kitchen was on. This place was some distance from the bathroom, so Feng Ling didn't listen carefully. However, she had just finished washing a bowl and was quickly wiping the water on it with a cloth towel when a tall shadow suddenly pressed against her from behind. She glanced at the shadow on the wall in front of her and didn't say anything until the man accurately found her and hugged her from behind. "I told you to take a shower. Don't move. Don't break the bowl later. Hug, can't I hug you?" Li Nanheng, who failed to successfully bring his little wife into the bathroom, hugged her tightly from behind. The tap had been turned on, and the chopsticks and bowls that had been washed were still scattered in the sink. Feng Ling forcefully pulled out a hand to turn it off, but because Li Nanheng failed to bring her into the bathroom, he tugged at her from behind and kissed her hair, ears, and the back of her neck for a long time. Feng Ling took the opportunity to pull her hand back and quickly turned off the water. She then placed the bowl that had just been wiped into the disinfection cabinet. Her cheeks were slightly red, but her voice was solemn. "Li Nanheng, the doctor said that you have to rest quietly. You'd better restrain yourself. I've already been quiet for so long." "How do you want me to restrain myself?" He had to prove that his injury was not there. "Anyway, the doctor said that you have to rest well. Rest for a year or so." Before she could finish speaking, she felt her waist being strangled. The man was much taller than her and forcefully pressed her against the edge of the cabinet. He then turned around and pushed her against the glass door of the disinfection cabinet. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.